Everyone, and welcome to our planning meeting. First one now in November. Please could everybody that's in the chamber make sure that all mobile phones are switched off. Okay. Right, I don't believe there's any members of the public here this afternoon. So I will... Of the press, sorry, yes. But then they may come in later. Sorry, you had your hand up? You are, because very often they sit somewhere apart from the others. But you're quite welcome and sit exactly where you want to. Thank you. I am County Councillor Ruth Edwards from Lunty Lucas Denny. I chair the Planning Committee. Onto my right is the only other member up here, which is my Vice Chair, and he'll introduce himself, and then all the officers here will introduce themselves accordingly.
Thank you, Chair. County Councillor Peter Clark from Llangibby.
And I'm Robert Tranter, the Head of Legal Services and the Temporary Monitoring Officer here at the Council.
Yeah, I'm Philip Thomas, Planning Services Manager, or Development Services Manager, sorry. Get my own job title right.
I'm Mark Hand, Head of Planning.
And I'm Paula Clark, Planning Applications and Enforcement Manager.
First of all, apologies for absence, please.
Apologies received from Councillor Webb and Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Councillor Evans? Thank you. And on behalf of the committee, I expect most people will know that Doug Edwards has been having surgery on the weekend, and we all wish him well and look forward to seeing him back here because he's been a long-standing member of the Planning Committee, so we wish him well. Declarations of interest, please. Right. No one can state to begin with? Anybody? No? Because we usually like to have them stated at the beginning of the meeting. But I'll take it as and when if that's what you wish. We'll now go on to confirm the minutes of our last planning meeting. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. If you've got a seconder, Councillor Evans? Yeah. Councillor Clark, seconds. Could I have a show of hands for approval, please? Okay. Thank you. We'll now go to the agenda of the first application, and that is on page 9. And this is Kimberley. Okay, Paula?
Yep,
thank you.
Chair. This application seeks a replacement dwelling at Kimberley the Narth. It's one that members visited yesterday. You can see the aerial photograph of the plot on the screen. The existing dwelling is a modest Woolaway bungalow set in a generous plot. The proposal was originally submitted as a full-height two-storey dwelling with triple garage. However, the scheme was negotiated down to a property akin to the height of a dormer bungalow and a double garage. The proposed dwelling has been designed as two wings with a central connecting element. So if you look through that's the existing Woolaway bungalow on site. The garden, there's a small garage to the side there. That's the access road. That's the view of the neighbouring property. Then we come into to the plot. That shows the house designed as two wings with a central courtyard at the back and a connecting element there. And then we have the layout and the elevations, Phil. That's the front and back elevation. The proposed dwelling has been designed with all first floor windows either to the front or facing the courtyard. No first floor windows facing to the rear. The site layout creates a private central courtyard to the rear of the dwelling, and a double garage is proposed to the northwest boundary. The garage has been designed with an off-centre roof to ensure the eaves are much lower on the boundary with the neighbour. The materials for the house and garage are reconstituted stone, plinths, cream render and grey painted larch boarding walls, a natural grey slate roof. A new axis is proposed central to the plot and the existing axis will be closed off. The north is characterised by a mixture of house types in the immediate vicinity and there's a predominance of dormer bungalows. The height of the proposed dwelling is akin to a dormer bungalow and accords with the height of neighbouring properties. This is a generous plot and the dwelling fits comfortably with plenty of space around it. The garage will not be highly visible and the materials and design provide a clean, contemporary appearance. There are no first floor windows overlooking any neighbouring properties and the dwelling has been designed to minimise its impact on the neighbours. There's a mature hedge which forms a common boundary to the north and there are new trees proposed to soften the development. The dwelling to the south is set at a lower level and the ridge height of the proposed dwelling will be 1.6 metres higher than the existing bungalow. However, it will be set 2.3 metres further away. It's therefore considered that the new dwelling will not adversely affect the amenities of the adjacent properties. Due to the concerns raised regarding the drainage and size of the property, additional conditions are proposed to that outlined in the report. And these would require approval of drainage details prior to commencement of development, a requirement for the driveway and all hard surfaces to be permeable, and the removal of permitted development rights for extensions and outbuildings. Officers therefore recommend approval of this application, subject to the conditions outlined in the report and the additional conditions suggested.
Thank you. I believe there's someone who wishes to speak from the Community Council. Is there today? Or just the objector? Mr. Nichols? Could you state your name, please, and you have 4 minutes. Thank you. Could you use the microphone, please? Press the button at the bottom there. Thank you.
Chairman and members, my name is Alex Nichols and I live at Woodfield Side, the Narth. I also speak on behalf of the other owners and occupiers of the properties adjoining Kimberley. Our major concern today is the statement made by the planning officer in paragraph 551 of your briefing notes, that the council has undertaken the required level of notification and consultation. This is not the case. There are a number of points of principle in relation to other issues about this application, an example of which is the massing effect. But today I wish to concentrate on drainage. Your brief for today acknowledges that drainage is a major issue for this site. Until the 20th of October, the stated means of dealing with surface water for the building was a soakaway under the tree line at the back of the property. We, the objectors, pointed out on a number of occasions to the planning office this was not only impractical, it was also unacceptable. We, the objectors, had to raise the issue with the council tree officer, and it was his intervention, on the grounds that the soakaway could not meet the combined requirements for root protection and distance from the building, that brought about the publication of a new surface water drainage system on the 20th of October 2015, a mere 2 weeks ago. The new scheme represents a fundamental material change in the surface, how the surface water will be channelled to an area deemed area available for rainwater dispersal, adjacent to the downslope boundary with Kynance. In an email to this applicant dated the 27th of June 2013, 2 years ago, the planning officer having rejected a 2-building scheme for the site, laid down that a porosity survey was a prerequisite for the future application. No such survey has been carried out. No expert opinion on the ability of the new arrangements to cope with the surface water has been made available to us or to the council. Given the obvious weakness of the applicant's agent in dealing with drainage issues, it is revealed by the necessity of the tree officer stepping into the earlier scheme, we do not believe that a hastily contrived alternative, prepared apparently without expert opinion, certainly no porosity survey, rushed in at 10 days' notice can be acceptable. If it doesn't work in all weather conditions, it is Kynance, the property downslope, that will be jeopardised by the excess water. Details of this fundamental change arrived with the owners affected on either the 23rd or 24th of October. The period allowed for us to prepare our case is obviously inadequate to deal with such a major change. The more so that it included 2 weekends, and for 5 of the remaining working days, the planning office concerned was we were informed was on holiday. We were only advised of the application of being in today's agenda on Friday of last week. We need time to deal with this issue. The application has been ongoing for more than 3 years, and yet it is us, the objectors, who are suddenly being put under immense pressure. We submit the council has failed to meet this obligation to us on this matter of adequate consultation and notification, and we ask the committee defer its decision until the necessary independent porosity survey can be carried out and its report made available and the drainage issue resolved to the satisfaction of all concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. I believe the agent, Paul Bryce, wishes to speak now as well. Thank you. You also have 4 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of council, my name is Paul Bryce. I'm an architect and the agent for this scheme. Kimberley is a Woolaway bungalow that has come to the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced. The previous agent proposed 2 large suburban houses. These rightly met with solid local resistance. The application stagnated unresolved. I was commissioned to take over in early December 2013. I met with neighbours in January 2014 at Woodfield Side, Mr Nichols' house, to try to make progress. I showed them a sketch proposal for 2 smaller cottages. They were concerned about local drainage issues and would not support 2 houses, but they accepted the need to replace Kimberley with 1 new house. I convinced my clients, Mr and Mrs Morgan, to go for 1 dwelling. I prepared sketch proposals to show Jo Draper. She said that she was happy with the size and principle of the proposals, but I would need to reduce the height. I reduced the height by putting rooms in the roof and digging the house in. Jo Draper said she was satisfied. I didn't meet the neighbours again, as we had reduced the proposal to 1 house and had achieved officer support. So we submitted. The plot is quite square with dwellings each side. I decided to propose a central courtyard around which the 1-room thick house is wrapped. Most rooms benefit from twin aspect light, which reduces the need to have the lights on. Bungalows often have deep plans that are dark in the middle. This 2-storey house has a daylit courtyard in the middle. To respect the scale of the existing properties, the proposed house is 1.5 storeys. On the outside, the upstairs rooms are only 1.2 metres high. The roof of the proposed building is nearly 1.5 metres lower than the roof of Woodfield Side, only 1.95 metres higher than the roof of Kynance, and only 1.665 metres higher than the existing Kimberley roof. The house is designed to be flexible, and the downstairs music room can be used as a disabled bedroom for elderly family members. It's a contemporary rural house for modern living. It intentionally addresses its site in a lovely leafy place. There's a south-facing garden to the right of the driveway, and the double garage roof will be a dedicated bat roost. Its layout is on a 4.5 metre module, so the rooms are only 4.5 square, 15-foot square. It's got 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms upstairs. The house has a footprint of 183 square metres, the garage 42 square metres. The site has an area of 1,140 square metres, so the proposed buildings occupy 19.7% of the site. Over 80% of the plot is open space, and as long as the driveway is permeable and the courtyard is permeable, it won't make a great deal of difference to the drainage. When the objections came in, we reduced the height of the ridges, we reduced the height of the eaves, the length of the garage was reduced, we removed the first floor windows and replaced them with roof lights above eye level, we removed first floor bays on the road elevation. So we amended the proposals in the end to a sealed cesspool rather than a sewage treatment plant, because then we can concentrate on getting rid of surface water rather than treated sewage. We've added many clarifications, but as we've answered queries, other different points are coming in, often from the same objectors. Madam Chairman, very few of the houses in this part of the North were there 60 years ago. They would have been fields and woods. The building of 2 large 2-storey houses on School Lane next to Bowmead was approved in October 2014. The new two-storey dwelling in the former garden of High Eyrie in Woodlands behind Woodfield Side was approved in June last year. It has, at 194 square metres, a larger footprint than our proposal on a similar sized plot, and at 7 metres, a roof which is nearly half a metre higher than ours. Both of these schemes allow additional houses on vacant land and were approved with site drain sewage treatment plants, taking away, obviously, soakaways. All houses have a finite life and will eventually be replaced with new houses. Kimberley has reached its end. We are proposing a one-for-one replacement. The current bungalows and dormer bungalows around the North are of their day. We are proposing a house of today. I ask you to approve the application for this well-considered house, which will be an asset to its lovely setting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Blakebury, this is your ward, so I'll ask you to speak first. I know you were at the site visit yesterday, along with a lot of the other members of the committee. Thank you, Councillor Blakebury.
Thanks, Chair. Just before I go on to the application, I would like to just make mention of the policy and the process to ensure that residents are able to comment on and access the process during planning applications. It is true that this particular application, there were residents who were very keen to be able to present planning today, and very early on we were asking for times and dates when it was coming to planning. They were told on a Friday that it was coming to full planning on the Tuesday, so it's just given them the weekend. Now, if somebody is working, it's very difficult to rearrange your commitments in order to get here. I was told that they should residents should rely on accessing information online in order to keep up to date, but we've already established that it's not always kept up to date because it is time consuming. Sometimes the hub goes down so you can't access it, and believe it or not, some people don't have computers and don't have access to broadband. So I think we just have to be mindful of that when looking at the process. However, the residents have worked very closely with planning on this application, and I believe there has been many changes as a result of that dialogue. Just two questions I just want to clarify. When you're looking at the ridge height of properties, I know it's not an infill because it's a replacement, but normally we try and ensure that the line of houses, you know, are in line and not sort of out of step. When I was looking at the report, 1.5, 1.10 and 5.2.3, they all seem to have different measurements. So could you just clarify with me what the ridge height is and how it looks compared to the two properties on either side? Chair, are you happy for me to just get answered? Do you want me to ask all the questions now, or?
I should think they could soon find the answer to this if you're patient.
Yeah.
Planning
Chair.
Officer Jo Draper is here if there are anything that she can...
She might have the answer.
Would you mind just repeating the 3 paragraph numbers that you mentioned? One of them was
It was
1.5.
just when I was looking through the report trying to work out what the height was. In 1.5, 1.10 and 5.2.3, there just seemed to be different measurements. And it was just, I just want to clarify what the height is and what does it look like in reference to the two properties on either side.
Thank you, Jo. I think Jo can answer that if you allow her to.
There are two different variations. You've got the measurement that you take on site, so from the ground level. And because the dwelling is being set into the ground, there's a measurement that's been taken to the dwelling to the north of that, which is the neighbouring property. So the issue is to minimise the neighbour impact. So it was important not only to demonstrate what what the height of the building was from ground level, but also to demonstrate what the height was from the perception of the neighbouring property. So that's why there was two figures given.
But so I'm still unsure. So you have the three properties, the new property. Is the roof height going to be higher than the two properties
No.
on either side?
No, it drops. It steps down with the road. That's how it's been designed, because which is what it does.
Chair, do you want us to point out the situation on the plan?
Yes, it would help.
On the far left-hand side of the screen, there's a little line with an arrow, and that's the ridge height of the property next door.
So it's about,
That's 57.94, is it?
yes.
Yeah.
there.
That one there.
That's Woodfield side ridge, 57.4 metres. I presume that's AOD, is it?
Then the proposed ridge of the house itself is 56.465, and that's the highest part. And then to the right of the plan is the level of the bungalow on the other side, which is 54.8.
That one's
So-
the existing bungalow, Phil. So if you see there.
Oh yeah, sorry.
You've got your pen to the left of that. That's the level
54.5.
where we are now with the existing wall away.
So the one we're on just now is the height of the existing bungalow.
Yeah, that's not the existing one, we're 54.8.
So can I clarify? So basically looking at that, this new dwelling will be higher than the two bungalows on either side. Looking at that. Oh, yes, I've got you. Right, yes, so it is a step down effect, okay.
Existing on site,
Right.
and then
Yeah, no, I've got that.
neighbouring finance.
That's fine, thanks. Yeah. So it's probably going to be just over a metre higher than the lower house. That's fine. So it's a step down approach there. Just in terms of size, then, it has already been mentioned that originally there was a request for 2 dwellings, and it was considered far too large. So this one dwelling, I do believe the footprint is just as large as the 2 dwellings that was originally put forward, and it's going from 100 square metres to 230 square metres, plus the additional hard standing and garage. Again, just a note of clarification. So urban areas percentage increase has a maximum. So if you're to rebuild in an urban area, they say you can't build over so much of a percentage in an urban area. But now what I'm asking, in rural areas, is there a maximum increase, or is it just any size goes?
No.
Are there any
There's-
guidelines?
The only size increase limit is outside of any settlement boundary. So if you're in an urban boundary or a village boundary, there's no sort of maximum limit. Yeah.
Thanks, yeah, because obviously the size of it has come up. So there's no planning laws, if you like, or legislation to basically say you can only build at a certain size. So it's within planning regulations, basically, yeah. And I was really pleased to see in late correspondence from the area of outstanding natural beauty, and they had made comment, and they have said that they're not in support of it, but they would, they reckon it will not have a significant detrimental effect on the area. So I think the main outstanding concern that I believe people feel hasn't really been addressed is the surface water drainage system. As you know, the north is subject to high water tables, and Mr Nichols has explained that with you. And there has been a history of moving this around to try and get the best place. I look at condition point 7, and that's one of the conditions is no surface water from the site shall drain onto the county highway or into the county highway drainage system and shall be disposed of on site. That's the condition. But I'm just wondering, have you spoken to Highways to ask if they're happy with the placement of the system, and are they happy that that drainage system is fit for purpose, if you like, and would meet their needs?
Chair, we have had a meeting with Highways officer and also Building Control. The long and short of it is the required distances of the surface water drainage from the carriageway of 5 metres are met. So that's why the hatched areas are slightly odd shape. So for building regs and Highways purposes, the surface water drainage has to be 5 metres from the building and from the highway. The Highways officer's happy. There is an engineering solution, but we're recommending this extra condition to get those extra details. So I mean, in short, his view is there's a solution to anything if you throw enough money at it. But we don't have those details at this stage. It is covered via building regs, so it would be covered through that process. But as a bit of a belt and braces exercise, we're suggesting this extra condition to require those porosity tests and those details as part of the permission.
One of the requests I was going to put forward really was that an independent engineer's report or a specialist report is brought forward to evidence that the proposed surface water drainage system will be workable, fit for purpose. And so that would provide assurance that the neighbouring properties and the highways would not be detrimentally impacted. I think the lack of that report, I think, makes neighbours feel a little uneasy because they do have these issues, and I wondered if that would be possible.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're asking for in the condition. So before development commences, they would have to provide details of the drainage system to be approved by us before development can start. So that's the condition, additional condition we're suggesting.
Okay, you happy with that explanation, councillor?
Yeah.
Right. Anybody else now wish to comment that were there yesterday especially? Nobody? No? No. Do you wish to move? Problem?
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to mention the one other point that Mr Nichols raised was about the consultation. So I just wanted to clarify on that point. We have reconsulted on the amended plans. It's not something we're required to do, especially not on something that in kind of perhaps our grand scheme of things is relatively minor, which is the changes on the drainage. But we're aware it's a sensitive issue for the residents, which is why we did it. But as Mr Nichols mentioned, the 14 days actually expires today. So what we're going to suggest is, if committee is happy with what's proposed as is, to resolve to approve, and if anything extra comes in before the end of today, we can bring the matter to Delhi panel for final decision.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that very much, Mark. Councillor Francis Taylor wishes to speak first. Thank you.
I just wanted some clarification from the officers about why it's come to committee quite so soon then, if the consultation ends today. I mean, that would seem to be very unusual in my experience. I don't know, not that I've got a particularly long experience. I'd like some clarification about that. And in terms of because I note that today we've got some other people that wanted to actually speak, and there's been some confusion there. And I do think that this issue of ensuring that people have adequate time to make their representations is really important in the process, because, you know, as you say, as Mark points out, in you know, the general grand scheme of things, some of these matters may seem minor, but in a locality they're really important. So I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that we are kind of deferring it to the delegation panel, according to your suggestion, or are we minded to approve it subject to that? Because I would really like to know from the residents, if possible, you know, whether they were comfortable with that, if it was subject to that porosity test you said. Because
Chair, the suggestion from myself was committee, if committee's minded to approve, then that decision's made now. But we'll wait until the close of play today to see if there's any further correspondence from residents. Obviously, we've had today's post, but we could have some more emails. If anything significant and news raised, we'll bring it to delegated panel. Otherwise, we'll take it through as your decision here and now. To clarify in terms of the consultation, yeah, I completely take your point. What we were consulting on were the amended drainage details, which, yeah, is obviously a sensitive issue, in particular in the locality. I guess our view was the concerns about how is the site drained, we were already clear on those. The objectors already made those views clear to us that was their issue, which is why we were proceeding. The application's been in for a long time, as you can see. Yeah, go on.
There's been very strong neighbour interest on this application, and the drainage has been a big issue. And during the process of working out whether the treatment plant would work, there's been a lot of conversations with the neighbours. They were clear before they were consulted. Well, the gentleman who just spoke before was certainly clear because there is regular communication with the gentleman concerned that it was coming in with a sealed unit because that was a solution to the drainage issue. And it was just a case of the application had to come in to demonstrate that. So they were aware that that was going to be the solution and that what was coming in. And so it's not come as a big surprise because that was it was quite clear in the number of weeks leading up to the revisions coming in that it was going to be a cesspit coming in as a drainage solution. So it was the impression that they were suddenly pounced on in terms of a new drainage solution isn't necessarily that correct.
Thank you, Frances Taylor.
I'm sorry, Chair, I'm just not quite clear why it had to come today, as opposed to, for example, if it needed to come to a committee, why didn't it come in December, so that the consultation period was quite clearly over. There was an opportunity to have any correspondence and also an opportunity, if necessary, to complete that circle. Given that, as you quite rightly point out, the application's been in for quite some time and there's been a lot of engagement, I'm just wondering why we needed to bring it today as opposed to, for example, the December committee when, that everybody would have had adequate opportunity.
If I can respond to that, the application, apart from the drainage issue, was written up in draft, ready to go in pretty much in August. And the applicants are very, very keen to move on. And anyone who knows who's got a plot, every month that goes by, it costs more and more. So the issue of the drainage was the outstanding matter that needed to be resolved. Once those drainage details came in, I gave the commitment to the applicant that once that was delivered, which was a solution to the site that the neighbours were aware of, that I would get it to the next available committee, which is exactly what I did. Not to waste another month, really. So they haven't been compromised in terms of the representation. They've been given the time, but they also had the heads up that this was coming in. And all the other issues of design, layout, had all been in for a long time for them to comment upon.
But it still doesn't say where we're in the consultation period and we're recommending that. I appreciate all that you've said, Joe, but it says it doesn't.
Sorry. I think perhaps.
Is an issue, and there is still an opportunity for people to come in, and therefore, Sorry. I'm just. The officers have made reference to the consultation period. We make reference in all our guidance to the consultation period. Whether we are obligated to go out or not, we have. And the consultation process does not close until today. And therefore, I'm just wondering, I understand all that you've said, but it would just seem to me more logical then to have come to December having a closed consultation period. Or, if it wasn't coming to committee, for it to have gone to delegation panel in the meantime. Anyway, I still think that, I appreciate that people, but when it's been a long time, you want to close it, but we have to follow process. We're very keen to follow process here, 99.9% of the time, and I just don't understand why we're not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blakeborough.
Just very briefly, when you said that the report was put together in August, there's been quite a few changes as a result of the discussions with the residents, because they do have local knowledge, and I would say it as a plus. You have taken on board many of their suggestions. I just wonder, without their suggestions, what would we have in front of us? And possibly it wouldn't be, a lot of these problems would not have been dealt with. Yes, I mean, my preference would be to defer this, to get this report so that people can read it and say, yep, no, it's fit for purpose, it will work, and then it goes ahead. That's my preference. My second option would be to, as I say, it would be to make sure that is a very clear condition in there.
I think actually that our planning officer has addressed all the concerns, as she said, and even if any more correspondence come in, I don't think myself that anything would have altered from what you've got in front of you today. Is that correct?
That's certainly my view, Chair. yeah, there could be something that comes in that we hadn't thought of, weren't expecting, but I thought
Any application.
indeed, yeah. I think the issues are being covered, the concerns are being raised very clearly, and I think we understand what the residents' concerns are and a way to address them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the options there that Councillor Blakeborough suggested.
Do you wish to move? I think we've debated it long enough.
What I will do is push my arm and go out on a limb and ask for this application to be deferred until we get that report about the water surface drainage system to make sure that it is workable and that highways and the neighbours' properties are protected. So that's what I would propose.
Chair, I mean, that's perfectly fine route for committee to go down. They can make that decision. I'm just wondering if committee is comfortable clarifying, if you go down that route, are you comfortable clarifying that is your only outstanding concern so that the applicant doesn't spend however much money and then come back to the next meeting and have an issue over the size of the dwelling or something like that? Because that would be a bit harsh on them.
I mean, I think at this stage, we know there's nothing within planning to say that. I think it's too big, but planning would say you can have it that big, so, you know, that there is no room for manoeuvre
I
on
think
there.
the
So
only
it's
issue
just
was the drainage,
just
Councillor
drainage.
Blakeman,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. So you wish to move
Deferral until we get that report.
Do you have a second for that proposal? And do we have a show of hands for deferment?
For deferral.
Those that are minded to approve?
Well,
Sorry?
Sorry, Chairman, if you go, first of all, say those against deferral.
Yes, sorry, yes, against deferment, sorry.
Yeah, so that's 8 against, so that motion isn't carried. So we come back now to the substantive motion, which is
To approve.
Or refuse
Yes.
planning application.
So is somebody willing to push for approval, please? And a seconder for approval? A show of hands for approval, please.
Which includes that condition.
Yeah, yes.
That's Alan, you've voted. That's 10, 11. Okay, that's 11 for the application and 1 abstention. So that the planning commission is that.
Right, thank you. You're all clear on that now? Right, thank you very much. We now move on to the next application, and that is on page 59. Yeah, now we've got to go to this one. This is what Phil said he wanted to do, that one. That's the one he wanted to do next.
Yes,
next.
yeah, the restaurant itself.
Yeah. Okay, Phil?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a full application for a freestanding restaurant with a drive-through on the site of the former Westgate Farm on the edge of Llanfoist. There's a plan orientated with the old buildings that were originally there. The site fronts the Heads of the Valleys Road and is allocated as an employment site in the adopted LDP. The site forms part of a wider commercial development approved under Outline Planning Consent 2008-00818, granted in 2010. And detailed planning permission has been granted for a Premier Inn hotel, a Brewers Fayre restaurant, and a Costa Coffee unit to the just to the sort of northwest of there. I'll show you the sort of broader layout of the area in a moment now. It's proposed to construct a McDonald's unit with a floor space of approximately 400 square metres, and the access will be via a spine road serving the wider development, which was approved under Reserve Matters Permission 2013-00266. The proposed restaurant would offer customers the choice of eating within the restaurant or taking away from either the counter or from the drive-through lane. The proposed restaurant itself would be able to accommodate up to 100 diners at any one time. Plus an outdoor area is also proposed, which would include furniture for dining on a patio. So just looking at the layout. That's the site as it originally looked. You can see the old gable end of the old Westgate farmhouse there, and that's the road to the civic amenity site. It's now been re-engineered. That's the slip road off the heads of the valleys, and that shows the sort of plateau area there behind which the actual restaurant would stand over on the left-hand side to the left of the pylon there. And that's showing it in context. So the site is in here with the restaurant in this sort of area, and that's the area where the hotel, Costa Coffee Unit and Brewers Fayre Pub Restaurant is proposed, with the heads of the valley and slip road off the heads of the valley leading to a roundabout, which will then access the site off here. If you want to go to Llanfairpwll itself, you'll continue on the roundabout onto the existing roundabout near the bridge. That shows the site in context. That's the restaurant itself. The drive-through, as you come into the site, you'll turn left into the drive-through, which is a queuing stacking system here, and the actual drive-through counters are here, and then you drive round and out or park in the car park. There's also obviously parking to actually access the front of the restaurant, which will face away from the heads of the valley road. That's showing it in context with the overall green infrastructure plan, showing planting along the periphery in green, and then linking green corridors throughout the site. And that's the strategic landscaping plan. So the site in context is in here. So there'll be buffers of planting around the periphery of the site. That's the proposed unit there. It's one that I'll describe in a little bit more detail as we go on, and that shows some actual coloured up perspective drawings. That's the drive-through that'll broadly face the heads of the valley road. And that'll face back towards the hotel. So if I go back to the actual elevations there, carry on. It's proposed that the restaurant would potentially operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to maximise passing trade from travellers using the trunk road, as well as other customers that wish to use the facility outside busier hours. The peak periods are usually lunchtime, as followed by evenings, and then also the breakfast period. And this type of restaurant proposed would normally employ at least 65 full and part-time staff. To ensure a recognisable product throughout the world, all franchises use standardised McDonald's branding, menus, design layouts and administrative systems. However, in this case, officers have negotiated design improvements to the restaurant to better suit the local context, including stone cladding to reflect the colour of the stone at Abergavenny Market Hall, and dark grey panelling and natural wood battens. The proposed signage does not form part of this application. There's another form of application that signage has to come in under, but it is considered in 3 further separate applications which will be considered after this particular item. The report sets out national and local policy regarding retailing in town centres, which I do not, for the sake of time, intend to repeat here. This would be going on at some length. There has been a substantial amount of interest in this application, as documented in the report, with significant objection, including the local community council and the national park, and support for the proposal. In terms of the acceptability of the principle of development, this site benefits from outline planning permission for employment and commercial use granted in 2010. While the site is allocated under the current LDP for B1 and B8 uses, the outline planning permission remains extant. The application has not been submitted as a reserve matters to that outline consent, as it is recognised that the proposed use, the A3 use, does not fall within the uses granted planning permission. It should therefore be considered as a standalone application on its own merits. The applicant argues that the proposed drive-through restaurant cannot be accommodated within the town centre due to the size of the site required and the need to be adjacent to a major road. The proposed restaurant will generate employment and may encourage preferred B1 and B8 users to occupy the remainder of the site. There are no McDonald's restaurants in Abergavenny, the nearest being in Ebervale and New Inn, some 14 kilometres and 15 kilometres away respectively. A restaurant in the proposed location would widen consumer choice in the area and be able to serve both Abergavenny and Llanfairpwll residents, as well as passing trade on the trunk road. It's also noted from some representations made in support of the proposal that the proposed restaurant would broaden the range of facilities on offer within the town. It is concluded that a McDonald's restaurant in Abergavenny, Llanfoist, can be regarded as meeting a qualitative need, although the quantitative need is less easy to assess, as acknowledged by our retail consultant. In terms of the sequential test, the drive-through model is less likely to be capable of being accommodated in town centre locations. While it might be possible to locate a sit-down McDonald's restaurant within Abergavenny town centre, it would not be possible to locate a drive-through restaurant there. Consequently, we would effectively be seeking an in-town McDonald's and an edge of centre or out of centre drive-through restaurant, both of which would have sit-in restaurant facilities. The applicant has drawn attention to an appeal decision for a McDonald's restaurant with drive-through facilities in Newquay. In this case, the inspector appears to treat a drive-through restaurant as being a different type of facility to a conventional restaurant, despite the drive-through McDonald's including conventional restaurant facilities as well. In his decision letter, the inspector says, "It is difficult to see how a developer could be flexible in respect of the format of a drive-through restaurant. Unlike a conventional restaurant, which could be easily accommodated on any of the identified sites, a drive-through, by definition, requires vehicular access and circulation through and around the building," close quote. In their analysis of potential alternative sites, the applicant investigates sites that would be capable of accommodating the drive-through model only, requiring a site of approximately 0.3 hectares. It's noted that the applicant's comments on the unsuitability of vacant premises within Frogmore Street refer to a drive-through model rather than a conventional restaurant facility. This approach has been considered in some very public planning cases, with the outcome being that it is not for the development to be altered to fit alternative sites. Case law is categorical on this matter. So it's concluded that it is not for the applicants to adapt their proposal to fit a site, rather to consider other sites that are of suitable size that fit the proposal, and in this case a drive-through restaurant. So there are two cases that are referred to, the Tesco Stores v Dundee City Council site, and then a Rushton Lakes decision which references the Dundee case. And in both cases, it confirmed that the Dundee case established the principle that if a site is not suitable for the commercial requirements of the developer in question, then it is not a suitable site for the purposes of the sequential test. So having regard to case law, it's concluded that use of the sequential test should recognise that certain main town centre uses have particular market and locational requirements, which mean they may be accommodated in specific locations. However, a robust justification must be provided where this is the case. And in this case, it's considered that the applicant has adequately demonstrated that there is a need for facility in the area and that there are no alternative sites within the town centre. What happened there? Oops. Let's go to that one. Might make it easier. Right. Okay. Sorry about that. So just to recap, the proposal for a drive-through restaurant at this site is therefore considered to meet the sequential test in that there are no suitable sites within the town centre to accommodate a drive-through function, which needs a bigger site area than a conventional restaurant. In terms of impact on the town centre, a McDonald's restaurant would compete most strongly with the existing fast food facilities offering takeaway products. However, even if specific existing facilities in the town centre were to suffer a significant diminution of trade, it is highly unlikely that the fast food sector as a whole in the centre would be significantly affected. Abergavenny has established a reputation for quality food, a highlight of which is the food festival, which draws large numbers of visitors. The town and its environs also have several high-quality eating facilities. It's very unlikely that such high-quality restaurants would experience direct trade impact from a McDonald's restaurant, given the significant difference on offer. However, it is noted that some objections to the application proposal express concern about the possible damage to the town's food reputation due to McDonald's restaurant. The council's retail consultant considers that potential damage to reputation can only be a matter of judgment, as there is no objective way of testing such potential impact. And given that the town centre already has a diverse range of restaurant, cafe and takeaway facilities, catering for a wide variety of tastes and needs, not only in the quality end of the market, it seems unlikely that a McDonald's restaurant on the application site would have any material adverse impact on the perception and status of the town as a high-end food centre. A proposal for a McDonald's restaurant drive-through on the nearby Hardwick roundabout was dismissed at appeal in 2001 for 2 reasons, with one of those reasons being adverse impact on the town centre. And notably, this application was not accompanied by a sequential test approach report, which the current application is, and minimal evidence of need. And the inspector determined that it did not accord with Planning Policy Wales. And since this appeal decision 14 years ago, the case law has been established through the courts that has given more direction on the interpretation of Planning Policy Wales. And in this case, the sequential test has been applied on the basis of the specific type of restaurant proposed, with need being established as a result of the Heads of the Valleys duelling that has taken place since the last appeal. The other reason for refusal related to the appeal proposal being likely to lead to hazardous pedestrian movements across the trunk road at the Hardwick roundabout. And that aspect is not relevant to the current application, as the site is in a different location, well away from the Hardwick roundabout, and pedestrian movements are being catered for within the wider road layout at the Westgate development site, as noted by our own Highway Authority. In terms of design, the overall design of the restaurant building is generic to McDonald's, the brand. This is the intention of the developer, who has indicated that the proposed building has been designed based on the function of the building and to reflect the corporate image, as stated in their design and access statement. However, officers have negotiated a number of improvements to the finishing materials, resulting in a more bespoke finish, far more in keeping with its surroundings. It's important to note that the site is adjacent to the civic amenity site, the dual carriageway and land allocated for industrial use, with overhead electricity cables and pylons crossing the site. And it is within this context that the proposal ought to be viewed. The proposed building is single-storey at a maximum of 5.8 metres high, but would be in an elevated position above the A465. However, in terms of scale and massing, it's considered that the building would not be unduly prominent when viewed in the context of the industrial-type sheds at the civic amenity site and the 3-storey hotel that has consent on the adjacent site. It should also be noted that this site has outline planning permission for commercial development and is allocated in the LDP for employment use. Were this application to be refused, there will in all likelihood be another building on this site. It is not the case that the site will be left vacant or undeveloped. Concerns regarding visual impact and the wider setting should be considered in this context. In terms of the World Heritage Site, Torfaen County Borough Council have offered no objection primarily in relation to the building itself, have more concerns in relation to the pylon sign proposed, which we'll consider later. And they do not consider it would have a significant impact on the World Heritage Site due to existing development in the area, but they have suggested that the proposed materials could be more sensitively selected to include local stone and timber finishes. And this was a view echoed by your officers, and therefore materials more appropriate to the local area have been discussed and agreed with the developer. So, as you see, the colours are dark green, dark grey, with local stone colours rather than the bright red and yellow branding of older McDonald's restaurants. Samples of the materials will be sought prior to the commencement of development. The roof is flat with a projecting what's called brise soleil feature, and this element will also screen any unnecessary roof plant from view. Even from the upper slopes of the surrounding hills, any view with a rooftop plant would be so distant as to not be harmful. A full lighting strategy for external areas of the site has been conditioned, as referred to by the National Park, Torfaen and Cadw. The planting approved under the earlier 106 agreement on the 2010 outline consent is unaffected by this proposal, as it's outside this particular site and will still be undertaken. This, combined with the additional landscape that we will secure from McDonald's, will help to screen the proposed building and soften the impact over time. And it's considered that the use of muted colours and elements of local stone will help the building respond acceptably to the local context. The approved new road layout will reduce the speed of traffic, leaving the A465 due to a new roundabout approximately halfway down the current slip road, as we saw previously on that plan. Yeah, which is that new roundabout which is being constructed as we speak. Yeah, halfway down the current slip road. In terms of pedestrian access, the proposed restaurant is located in what can be considered an out-of-town location. Pedestrian football is likely to be relatively light considering its more isolated location. However, pedestrian accessibility will be improved as a result of the development, and the necessary measures are in place for the diversions of footpaths. There'll also be segregated footways, crossing points, and a new puff-in crossing on the two-way section of road. In this area, there actually be a puff-in crossing to allow people to come past Waitrose under the bridge and cross at this point, and then use the footways and crossing points to actually access the site. The Community Council refers to the application being a departure from the outline consent. As stated previously in this report, the application is a full planning permission rather than reserve matters, should therefore be considered as a standalone application on its own merits. The proposed use is not considered to contradict or prevent the Council's employment aspirations for the larger site and is considered to complement that offer. That is not to say that further proposals for non-B1 or B2 commercial uses will be supported. Proposals would have to be considered on their merits, but the range of employment supporting services is considered to be sufficient at this time. So in conclusion, the applicant has justified that there's no sequentially preferable location for a drive-through restaurant. The impact of the proposal on the vitality and viability of the town centre and other sequentially preferable retail locations is considered to be minimal. Abergavenny is a thriving town, and it is not considered that this facility would have a significant detrimental impact on that, nor on the town's reputation as a leading high-quality food centre. Design improvements mean that the proposal is now considered to be acceptable, taking into account its wider setting and the features of landscape and heritage importance in the locality, as well as existing and proposed built development on adjacent land. And this takes into account the already approved landscaping proposals, as well as those to be implemented by the applicant. The impact on residential amenity is considered to be acceptable. Vehicle and pedestrian access is acceptable, as are the proposed parking arrangements. The restaurant offers a range of food choices and other outlets are available in the wider area. Responsible adults will be able to make informed choices about their eating, lifestyle and travel habits, and to educate those entrusted to their care to do likewise. The proposal brings the benefits of employment opportunities, would not prejudice the Council's aspirations for the wider employment allocation. Therefore, we would recommend approval.
Thank you very much indeed, Phil. I think any questions or queries, I should think you've just about covered the lot. I believe the local member wishes to speak on the application. Thank you very much, Councillor Hickman. You have 6 minutes, I believe.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members. Well, I really cannot win on this matter. When I was first contacted by a local member, as a local member, way back over a year ago, I was asked my views on it, and I said, well, I'll represent the majority of views, which suited the caller at that time, as there were a lot of antis gathering. Since then, the Yes campaign's come out, and I must admit, it's sort of pretty 50-50. But there we go. So some people want it, some people don't. I've got a few not accusations, but a few people wanted to speak today and are saying that they couldn't get through to book a slot. So amongst your three decisions, I think deferral could be a possible option. Because Llanfoyce Community Council wanted to speak, and as did Abergavenny ACED, Campaign for Exemplary Development. So instead of a fluent speech, I've got a bit of a mismatch of all comments. But first of all, I would say that deferment would be a fair option to give everyone a chance to speak. Also, this matter hasn't been discussed at Abergavenny Town Council, so there's no representation from them today. I know it's not their area, but it's well on the well, you virtually call it Abergavenny in a rate. So the precedent's been set as there's previous sort of buildings already going there with Brewers Fayre, the Premier Inn, Costa Coffee. So we know you can't really sort of object on that on those grounds. There's going to be something there. If it's not this, it'll be a competitor or maybe a factory. So what we would like to have seen is a 3D model to see how it all fits in with the area, because this has been done in a really piecemeal fashion. Although you say it's a small site, it's a massive site because all these things have already gone on. There's 65 houses. There's an area that who knows what might come there, but we all think we know what might come there next. It's just done in just a underhand way, really. So that's what's really got everyone's goat. I sort of wrote this sort of speech by incorporating the lot about the signage, etc. So I don't know if I'll be able to speak on those issues after. But, you know, 24 hours, fully illuminated site, a drive-through development in the Usk Valley and the front of the Blorenge Mountain, entrance to both the Blaenavon World Heritage Site and the Brecon Beacons National Park with its dark skies status. It's a significant departure from the outline of the planning permission that was originally granted back in 2010. So, like I say, it's been built up piecemeal, and we would really like to see a 3D model to see how all this would fit in. Also, I sort of disagree with the officer that said it couldn't be located within Abergavenny. There is a possibility of a drive-through that could be built on the former cattle market site in town, which had been earmarked for a library, which is not forthcoming. Also, safe access. I know there's one Pelican crossing, that's quite handy, but we've still got the heads of the valley there, and people are saying from the Abergavenny end how they would cross the road, and you might have people ducking and diving to get across the heads of a valley up that end. So I'm sorry, I'm sort of moving backwards and forwards, but there's a lot to do with the illuminated signs and the totem pole, which is well, totally unacceptable. But so where can I go? Well, I guess there are McDonald's in Venice and Bruges and places like that, but they were probably built with strict conditions. So if this is likely to go ahead, then I'm sure you could impose some really strict conditions. Obviously, I'll be back to talk about the totem pole. But also, we've had a comment about the red brick. It should be more pennant stone, which is a mottled grey, purple and red, rather than all red. And maybe a bit more timber. Slate was mentioned, but obviously they can't do that with the canopy that covers the air conditioning. But hopefully you'll defer it at least, but if you do decide to approve it, then you would put strict conditions on. So that's my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Yeah, we did have other people who wish to speak. They're now sat with the public because we have the criteria due to, you know, setting up a planning committee and time is of the essence, that we do request that anybody who wishes to speak, that they need to register before 12 noon on the Monday. And if there's more than 5 objectors, then they should allocate just one person to speak on behalf of the 5+. But obviously they hadn't registered to speak, and so it's been left to Councillor Hickman to try and state their case with he's already allowed to speak, being the local member. So if anybody wishes to make any representation, if they can't register themselves, get someone to register for them by noon on the Monday, the day before planning. Is that all right, do you think? Anybody else wish to? No. Right, Councillor Taylor.
Can I clarify, Chair? Because in late correspondence, it says that there was an oversight by the clerk, which is part of why people weren't able to register to speak. And I've talked on this matter before, in particular, where there are significant developments. And there are sometimes, you know, and sometimes in the past, Chair, we've had more than one person to speak on. We've had several people, depending on what the issue is. So I feel uncomfortable that we aren't able to hear from all of those who wished to speak.
The thing
Can
is,
we
if nobody, sorry, Councillor Taylor, if nobody has registered to speak, there is no chance then for the applicant then to respond to any concerns.
I appreciate that, but I'm trying to get to the bottom of what it says in late correspondence and what it says in the correspondence we've had from the Abergavenny campaign for exemplary development. Can we clarify that, please?
We haven't seen the latter document you refer to, so can't comment, I'm afraid.
Oh. It says that there was there's been an oversight. So is that presumably that they weren't aware it was on the agenda?
Councillor Hayward?
Yes, Chair, I think we've been a bit unfair here. In the last one that came before this committee, even though we are still in the consultation period, we said we would actually come to a decision and we would bend the rules slightly there to ease the applicant coming in, because the applicant, even though he put the application in 2 or 3 years before, had only put the plans in the last fortnight. So we were quite prepared to be flexible there, and it seems to me here that we're not trying to be flexible. We're saying because the people haven't kept to the rules exactly and didn't give us the required notice, we're now not letting them speak. It seems to be a complete opposite to what we wrote last time.
But then the applicant themselves have not had the chance either then to respond to anything, because they're not here because they didn't.
No, that's true, Chair, but in the last application, the residents said they hadn't had time to put their objections together because they only had 7 days, of which 2 of the days were weekends, etc. So they were using that argument for not being able to respond in time, and we said, sorry, rules is rules. We seem to be making rules is rules, but they can be bent in that instance because of the time required for this person to put his application in 3 years ago. We could have turned around and said, you put your application in 3 years ago, why is it taking you within only 10 days of the committee to put the drainage scheme in? You know, we seem to be going both sides of the case here, one for the last application, one for this one, which I'm not really comfortable with.
I don't agree with that. That's a different argument altogether. And I think if people are tracking applications and very concerned about it, they really do need to take the responsibility to make sure that somebody has registered, even if you expect your clerk to take it on yourself to make sure that that registration has been made in time, especially if it's a very emotive issue. Councillor Dovey, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We seem to be arguing about something or trying to debate something here where we're not in a position to decide whether or not the error made by the clerk is effectively spoiling this decision going forward. I mean, can we know what was the error that everybody's referring to? Because I don't know whether that affects what we're trying to achieve here today.
Yeah. So I wasn't in the office yesterday afternoon, but the email came through to me from the clerk for Lamp Forest Community Council at 25 to 4, saying I missed the sending of the planning committee agenda, and is it all right if members can speak? And I obviously informed them this morning that it wasn't because they hadn't registered before the necessary deadline of 12 o'clock.
Well, then,
Okay, thank you.
If that is the case, Madam Chairman,
We will continue.
Then we should continue.
Yes, thank you. Right, we'll pay heed to what we've got in front of us now at the moment. Several members were there at the site visit yesterday, and the local member has spoken, so I will now take the members, first of all, from Abergavenny, which are nearest at hand. Councillor Powell first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's just 2 things I'd like to bring up that were mentioned by the local councillor and under various things. They were talking, and I think the Brecon Bigs were saying, they're worrying about the lights being on all night. Well, at the moment, the lights over the transfer station are on all night, and they shine through my bedroom window, so they're on all night. So what difference is the McDonald's lights going to be when I've got the transfer station lights on all night? And The other thing was the concern about the crossing over this new piece of road. Well, it's going to be a boon for a lot of people, because at the moment, children going to Llanfoy School have got the problem of crossing that road because there's no crossing there, and we've been told that you can't have a crossing there until this new road system goes in, when you've got the two-way. There's going to be a crossing put in, which will help people to walk from Llanfoist into town, as well as the children to Llanfoy School, apart from going to McDonald's. So in one way, we're gaining, because we've been wanting a crossing there for years to help people to go into town. So that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Roger Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been an interesting debate. In fact, it's been an interesting afternoon so far altogether, entirely different to most of the recent committees. I am convinced that we have got enough material here as members of the Planning Committee who are trained and should adequately be able to assimilate what we have before us to come to a decision this afternoon on this application and indeed the other applications. It can be seen from the agenda that there are many people objecting to the proposal, and it can be seen that there are more than those objecting that actually want to see the restaurant. As far as I can see, this site is allocated for this sort of purpose, and as has been mentioned, if McDonald's doesn't go there, anything else could go there, and who knows what that could be. It is allocated for this sort of development. I can't see anything in here that I could object to on planning grounds for me to say that we shouldn't have this these plans passed. And we're here to be brave and make decisions, and I'm going to move approval.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Right, thank you. I believe Councillor Blakebury, you had your hand up, did you, beforehand?
Well, I suppose I was going back to the process. I guess it might be useful to investigate the process in terms of it is a major development. A lot of people are keen to speak, and I would be interested as to what happened in terms, were they given the information? Did they know they had to put
That's
their
not for us
application
to debate here
not,
now
not
today.
not today, but I think it has to be raised, because if people feel that they can't voice their opinions, I think that we need to kind of look at that. Just one of the questions, just because we are just focusing on the drive-through restaurant, we're not talking about the signs or anything at this point. So for the drive-through restaurant, can I just ask who is responsible for litter as a result of McDonald's? And is there any 106 money?
Yeah, Chair, the applicant, as McDonald's is responsible for litter within the site, and they do regular litter picks. Otherwise, essentially, when you buy something, you're responsible. You don't buy a burger and they say, oh, please drop the litter down the road. It's up to responsible people to behave responsibly. But McDonald's do say that if there is a particular hotspot outside of their site where there is a litter problem, and they're told about it, they will do regular litter picks in that area.
Can I just clarify, that road, is that Welsh Government's road, or is it Monmouthshire's road?
The trunk road is a trunk road, so it's Welsh Government.
It's Welsh Government. So if there was litter along there, would it be their responsibility to clear it up?
Well, I imagine, the Welsh Government would do their regular litter picks. They'd have to do when whoever's throwing whatever they're throwing out the windows is doing so.
Right, I've got several hands up at the moment. I'll take now, first of all, Councillor Dovey, then Councillor Higginson, and then Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, with regard to the waste clearance, every McDonald's store has a clean-in regime and a clean-in team, and they worked up to about 400 yards around, as I recall. And they will go further than that if there is a key hotspot, as you said. The rest of it is down to the public. They are, you know, your local fish and chip shop, it has exactly the same problem. Your off-license cans and whatnot, so you can't expect them to do more than they are reasonably doing at the moment. The other thing I would like to say is I welcome the fact that McDonald's have shown some flexibility in terms of adapting their corporate identity. They spend a lot, all these companies spend a lot on their corporate identity to try and make it fit and sell their businesses. And it's a welcome sign, I think, that they have been flexible on this here. However, I do have some concerns here. I really want to know how the McDonald's signs on the fascia work, particularly which are the ones that are facing down the road. So could you explain that to me, and also where the gantry sign goes?
That is subject to the separate applications. So, I mean, what we're trying to do is looking at the building and the principle of development first, and we'll move on to the signs.
Does that include lighting or not?
The lighting of the signage, yes.
Yeah, that is.
But not the lighting of the car park necessarily.
Lighting of the car park,
yeah.
I had it down here as an area of some consideration, because the lighting will be, if you like, in front of the scenery behind, which is iconic. So I would like that lighting to ensure that it is down lighting, you know, so as it isn't broad lighting. So it is as far as possible lighting that it is contained within the car park. It doesn't spread. And the other point I would like to make, and somebody in the council might be too happy about this, I wasn't aware that there was blue sky status for that area. If it is a blue sky status area, we should take... Pardon? Dark sky. I didn't know what that was. Show I didn't know about it. If there is dark sky status, we should take note of that, and we should also take note of the fact that our waste station is lit up like a Christmas tree all night, and so perhaps we ought to put our own house in order as far as that is concerned as well. But I know that isn't part of this planning condition, but I will make the point anyway.
Yes,
okay?
thank you, Councillor
I'll
Welby.
wait for the separate thing for the signage.
Thank you. Councillor Higginson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not going to nitpick. I mean, we've had some very extensive information from the officers on this, even to the design of the building, the building materials, now we're blending as far as possible on the site. It is something which that many people tell me I haven't given any needs and wants, and I don't think the market site, for example, in the middle of town, is suitable for that. I think this is an excellent site. It'll draw in a lot of traffic, obviously, because of its you know, prominence. But the other side of it is that you know, you talk about lighting. There won't be any lighting pollutions. I mean, everything will be developed as far as I can understand. You know, it won't be a problem to nearby residents. It's going to employ a lot of people, and that's important in this area at this point in time. So I'm going to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Higginson. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just on the point of litter. Litter is not the responsibility of McDonald's or Tesco's or Waitrose or anyone else that has an establishment. It's the responsibility of the irresponsible person that's consumed whatever they've consumed and throws it on the ground.
Microphone, Roger. Oh, it's me. Sorry.
All right. You know, and as has been mentioned, it's specific to most, if not all, McDonald's that they do litter picks, and there's so many things that really aren't planning concerns as such that we should even consider turning down an application because irresponsible people throw litter.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Clark and then Councillor Taylor wishes to speak, do you?
Yeah.
Yes, right, thank you.
If you refer to page 98 of the report, it tells you there that McDonald's pick up litter 3 times a day and more if necessary. And as someone who lives 5 miles from a McDonald's site, I can tell you most of it is distributed there, not on the site where the application is.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Francis Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as someone who lives quite close to a McDonald's or a service station McDonald's, I can tell you that the litter is distributed all around the place. And McDonald's generally do a good job of picking litter on their particular sites, but usually only up until 400 yards. And yeah, people's behaviours, you know, we can't legislate for, but actually we spend hours talking about other kinds of behaviour. We won't go back to the dog fouling debate we once had in full council. But anyway, we'll stick to what's in front of us. I have to say, I'm kind of slightly confused here because we've got a number of concerns raised by the AONB around the development. In fact, they object not the AONB, the Brecon Beacons National Park, sorry. The Brecon Beacons National Park, and also the heritage site. And we've also got some concerns and objections from our landscaping officers, and then a counter suggestion, which is actually, well, there isn't enough evidence for us to reconsider the GI issues from the original consent, the outline consent. And I'm slightly confused about that because it goes back to Councillor Hickman's point about all of the site being developed in a very piecemeal way and us not having an understanding of what that looks like in its entirety as we add things. And I am concerned that by doing it in that way, we do end up having a cumulative detrimental impact. And our supplementary planning guidance on GI was meant to avoid that so that we don't end up with this kind of cumulative impact on the wider environment. So I'd like some guidance from the officers on that. And in terms of our regard for the objections we've had from the Brecon Beacons National Park, I just want to, wonder what officers could say something about that. 'Cause although it was quite comprehensive, I'm not sure it really covered that. So I think that's certainly a concern of mine, and I expect we'll cover it a bit more when we come to the signs.
Chair, in terms of the comments about piecemeal development of the sites, I mean, this one is a full application. Ignore that for a second. The wider site's got outline consent for commercial development and is allocated for B1 and employment type uses. So in that context, the fact it's going to come forward in sections is just a fact of life, unfortunately, and something that we have to deal with as planners and as a committee to ensure that the pieces fit together. If we sit and wait for all of their sites to come forward in once, with every potential developer, we'll be waiting a very, very long time. So the idea of some of these schemes, for example, the hotel, is to help spur along the development of the rest of the site to make it attractive to other developers. So the short answer is it will come along in bits, and that is a fact of life in planning, unfortunately. And we'll have to assess each bit as it comes along and make sure it fits together properly. But we can't control that.
How does that fit with the officer comments and recommendations for the green infrastructure now? How does that fit with that with their comments? Our officers are saying we've concerns. In fact, we object to the proposals. In that the shrubs that are proposed are just not going to provide any mitigation. We're having a cumulative impact, and then we've got a paragraph, in response to that, saying, well, we don't think we need to revisit that. And
in isolation, I would agree. As in there's a small handful of trees proposed at the moment, which don't do the trick. But as part of the outline consent that already exists, there's a really extensive area of planting proposed. with some various other ecology works. So in that context, with the other landscaping proposed, we think that issue is covered. I think the GI team have probably looked at this application in isolation and assume this is a starting point and not looked at what's already approved in the area. So that's the angle we've come from.
And I think that's a similar response to the BVMP response to their consultation reply, in that I think they've looked at it a little bit out of context with what was approved in the strategic planting plan, for instance, which you can't really see very well. But you can see there are belts of woodland that will be planted around the periphery of the site. We've also conditioned that the landscape bank, which you'll have seen from the photographs, is planted up more strongly than is proposed by McDonald's at present, and they've actually agreed to that, which will actually break up the building significantly, so it won't be as stark as it would be initially. In that context, I think you sort of read into the National Parks comments somewhat. Their concern is that, there's limited planting. They haven't looked at it in the context of the strategic planting and what will be conditioned. They're also talking about a 12-metre pole stand, which we'll come on to later. It's not 12 metres, it's 8 metres, but that's a different issue in its own right. And they talk about the illumination. Well, provided you've got control over intensity of lighting and other aspects of it and the landscape, then we feel it will assimilate into the setting quite acceptably. Also looking at it in context with the hotel development, etc., which I think CADU has perhaps grasped in a little bit more realism than the National Park have. So I think we'd have to agree to disagree really with National Park, but that's, in hindsight, we've got the benefit of the other detail that they haven't perhaps taken into account.
Right, thank you. Councillor Powell?
Can I come back a minute? We're getting in quite in a state about this place, this beautiful spot. One side we have transfer station, the other side we have all the gritting lorries and the salt for the winter, and we've got between the town and Llanfoist, we've got a huge big dual carriageway. Over the top we've got the biggest pylons you can see anywhere. So, you know, this is a piece underneath that, which really, without it, we've still got those other things around. And I think there was a comment about it not being discussed by the town council. It is in Llanfoist. So it's a Llanfoist Community Council, not Abergray Town Council.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Hayward?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Hickman. There's things for it, there's things against it, but I think in general the site is suitable for McDonald's, and I'm not against it in principle. I am concerned about the fact that we don't necessarily have all the representations here, because whilst it might be Llanfoist, there are lots of people in Abergavenny who feel precious about the surrounding area, who would like to make representations. But it is a difficult decision, and I believe that there's, for every person and every argument you find for the restaurant, you'll find one that says against it, but I'm generally for it. My question is, I'm just a little bit concerned about the parking. I've looked at the report and I can't find any parking details on there, but looking at the map on there, it appears to me that there's 64 parking spaces, and yet it's a 100-seater restaurant. It's got a minimum staff of 65. Have we got enough parking there? I think it gives minimum figures at one time, doesn't it? 65. But even so, if there's 20 or 30, there's 100 diners, plus people eating in the restaurant. What I want to do is ask the question, is it parking 65 sufficient? It's all to do with this piecemeal. We're looking at the whole site with this, Costa Coffee, with everything, all as a oneer. The last thing we want is, we know that people will go to McDonald's. If there's access into the hotel, they'll go and park in the hotel and walk across to McDonald's. The next thing we'll be involved in arguments, and people say, why didn't we put enough parking in? Also, if the parking isn't sufficient, then the thing that will suffer is the screening from the road and the screening to make this site looking nice. So I think the parking is important, and that's the question I want to ask. Is 65 spaces, it might be statutory okay, but do we consider 65 places sufficient? Thank you.
Yes. There's no objection from Highways. And again, taking it back a step, we're talking about other locations. You know, McDonald's are very mindful of how many seating places there are and how many customers, so they're going to make sure they have a site that has enough parking in. Well, it's highly unlikely that all 100 seats are taken by people that travel there individually. There should at least be a few people who've gone there with their friends or family in a car together. So yeah, we wouldn't imagine there being 100 cars, plus that many staff all there at once.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. Right, I think Councillor Harris, he moved approval and was seconded by Councillor Powell. Can I have a show of hands for approval, please, as recommended? Those against? Any abstentions? Right, thank you. That's quarterly approved. Do you want to go now to page 19, Phil?
Yes, please, yes.
Right, we now go on to, still with McDonald's on page 19.
Sorry, Chair, which,
page 19.
oh, my,
It's 4B.
998.
4B, thank you, 4B, thank you very much.
Okay, everyone? Okay?
Okay.
Okay, this application proposes 28-30 signs
Hands up to 30, please.
for information purposes within the curtilage of the proposed restaurant. These include 2 welcome and goodbye totem signs at the site entrance, 0.6 metres high and internally illuminated, so they'll be in that area. Okay. A height restriction gateway with totem on one side at the entrance to the drive-through. That would be 3.2 metres high. There would be a backlit illuminated drive element and open 24 hours to the front of the totem. So it'll be in that area there. Actually, yeah. Actually, they're there, aren't they? They're there. And then there'll be 4 totem signs, 2.4 metres high in the drive-through area, and 2 totem signs, 2.5 metres high in the drive-through area with an internally illuminated rotating sign within. So those are information boards within these areas. I'll show you the signs afterwards. They'll be within the drive-through area and act as a menu for people driving through and stacking and queuing to come around to the actual drive-through itself. Sorry, so that's the actual height limiter near the entrance to the drive-through. Those are something which I'll come back to in a moment. And those are the sort of totem boards, 2.4 metres high, that they'll have within the drive-through area. And I'll go back, I'll leave it on that for the moment. The fascia signs on the building I'll come on to in application 00999, as well as the totem sign, the big tall pole sign, which is under application 01001. So they're under separate application. Advertisements can only be considered in relation to 2 issues: the effect on amenity, and in this case, highway safety, as it's so close to the road. If I can just go back for a moment on that sign there, those are quite large, what we call banner signs. Now, they're quite wide, they're almost 5 metres wide and 2 metres high. There are 3 of those proposed, and I'll point those out in a moment, because I think having had a look at this, officers have got some issues with the need for those signs. One here, one there, and one there. So I'll come back to those in a moment, but I think in terms of the other signs, we feel that they're largely functional. They'll actually be there to help the drive-through operate, and or be directional signs that you normally find within a car park for road safety to stop accidents, etc., or conflict with pedestrians. So we don't have an issue with the vast majority of signs proposed, and we think those are reasonable within the context of the McDonald's restaurant. They'll need to be lit as the restaurant is open during the nighttime, evening hours in the drive-through area, and the welcome signs will actually be appropriate at the entrance and exit to the restaurant. So we don't feel that those are excessive in number or in design and scale. The ones we do have an issue with are the actual banner signs in the location here, and over there. We think that they're probably unnecessary. If there are going to be fascia signs which you accept on a building, which are reasonable to announce the identity of the building, we don't see the need for the actual banner signs. We think those are probably excessive and visual clutter. So we would recommend for this particular application accepting the majority of the information signs, but to actually have a split decision whereby we approve the signs I've mentioned but refuse the 3 banner signs in those locations. So that's what we would recommend for this particular application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Does the local member wish to speak on this?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pretty much in agreement with that, really. I was just going to say 28 signs. It really is like a Christmas tree. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I'm glad I'm not paying the electric bill. But is it all necessary? But basically, a lot of it is, but they're not all illuminated. Right, okay. Well, that's a start. But I totally disagree, or totally agree with yourself over the 3 5 metre by 2 metre vast signs. So providing they don't go through, then that'll be a start. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hickman. Right, right. The rest of the committee now wish to debate this. Councillor Powell.
As long as we do without those 3 banner signs, the others are more or less necessary for directions, and I think I could go with that without, as long as we don't have those 3.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Blakeborough.
Just quickly on the welcome signs, will that have English welcome and Welsh welcome? and how big is that sign to accommodate both English and Welsh?
Chair, I think as proposed, that's a good point, and they are just in English. So we need to go back and check that with the applicants, because what we don't want is double the number of signs, just to be bilingual.
Thank you. Are you happy with that? But would it have to come back to us now if they do say they want double the sign? Because that would be very intrusive. Councillor Taylor?
Can I seek clarification, Chair? So there is an application for 28 signs or whatever, or 30 signs, and that, but it's recommended for approval. Well, if it was recommended for approval, then that means we approve the whole thing. So I'm confused why.
No.
Chair, with advertisement
hang on.
consents.
Can I finish what I was saying? Sorry. In the banner signs that you're just talking about, that you're minded not to say are necessary, surely that's part of the application. So I'm a bit confused. Yeah, no, you might be, but I'd just like to finish before my colleagues, sort of tell me that I'm wrong. I personally am minded, why do you need so many illuminated signs? If you're going to have some signs, they surely should be minimal and they should not be illuminated.
They're not illuminated.
Yes, but quite a number of them are, Chair. And it seems to me that to have signs for the purpose of necessity is one thing, but these are not. They seem to be advertising, and one doesn't illuminate things unless it's necessary. And given how long it will be open, it seems that's just not necessary, really. It's just creating further light pollution. So I'm just minded that this is unnecessary. A lot of it's unnecessary. I understand that when people are ordering food, they need a picture of the food they can order, but some of the other seem a little unnecessary.
Chair, in terms of the first part of the question, applications for advertisement consent are unusual. We can issue a split decision, so we can grant half and refuse half. We're allowed to do that. The regulations let us do that. So whereas every other type of application, we're saying it's this or nothing, it's all of it or none of it. Adverts are different. So we can do that. Yeah. It is, well, it's a helpful tool, and sometimes it'd be helpful if we could do that on all applications, but there we are. In terms of the illumination, they're not all illuminated. I guess we need to bear in mind, even at 4 o'clock in December, you'll need the signs, or some of the signs, to be illuminated, because you won't be able to see them then. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Dovey, please.
Yes, I think. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Taylor sharp-eye picked up an error there. We shouldn't say recommended for approval if we are not going to recommend 3 of them. Having said that, with regard to the other signs, they are basically supplying information. And I know the Welsh thing crops up and always will. You know, I don't know many Welsh speakers that can't speak English, but that's just me. My particular people, and I understand what other people's feelings are. But the fact of the matter is we do have other people that come visit in this part of the country that come from China, for instance. They come from all around the world, and we're expected to feed them here, and they mightn't understand exactly what they're eating. And something that is pictorial, and they can see in the day and the night, is quite necessary. We're trying to satisfy the public, make it easy for them, make it safe for them, and not make it a challenging experience.
Thank you.
I would say we don't need the welcome and goodbye signs. That's not providing any information whatsoever. That's just welcome and goodbye. So I would propose that along with the hero boards, because they're illuminated signs and we don't really need to say welcome and goodbye to all our guests in illuminated signs, do we? I would recommend that we do not approve those either because they're entirely unnecessary and just part of McDonald's marketing. Oh, I thought they weren't part of the town, Maureen. They're in Lamb Forest.
Yeah. Those signs, if there's any benefit in them, aren't big. They're only 0.6 metres high. So.
I think we must make headway on this.
I think we will progress. I made a proposal though, Chair, so because we can do it split consent.
I'd like a proposal now for omitting 3 of the signs. Is it that you want them?
And the 2 welcome goodbye signs.
The welcome and goodbye signs. Because the welcome and goodbye signs are welcome goodbye to McDonald's, not to this glorious county. And we wouldn't have them illuminated if they were, would we? Not better.
Chairman, perhaps consider the proposal to delete the welcome goodbye signs first.
Right. That is what Councillor Taylor proposes. Do you have a seconder on that? Councillor Hayward seconded. Could I have a show of hands for that? Could you hold your horses a moment while Phil delves into his box? For omitting the 2 signs, 1 welcome and 1 thank you very much for coming in, actually, I should think. Goodbye.
Chair, the signs are here. They are 600 mil wide, 2.1 metres tall. The bits that are illuminated are this white bit at the top, the word welcome and the word see you soon, and the arrow and this 24-hour logo.
Size of one of those doors.
It's giving directions as well.
No, one of the doors, not both of them.
It's giving you directions as well.
Actually, sorry. This bit here is not illuminated, so you've got this section at the top, word welcome or see you soon, and this arrow. That's illuminated. The rest is dark green.
It's also giving directions as well.
Want me to pass it around?
But those arrows can be painted on the road the same as everybody else.
I mean, it is highway litter.
Councillor Dovey.
Madam Chairman, I just don't believe this. We're talking about things that are supposed to be helpful and informative and make people welcome. To actually say we don't want to welcome anybody in any retail business, that you can't go through and do that. And bear in mind, all these retail businesses combine to give an impression of what we're like as a country is really mind-bogglingly daft. That they indicate the way in, so as people are sure where to go. They indicate the way out, and they say please and thank you, which is something that we should all do in life, whether you are part of a business or individual.
Right, I think we've made this long enough. I'd like to make a decision on the signs that are for welcome and goodbye or whatever with all the other signs. Phil has now got them up on the screen, so I'm sure you can all see.
And sorry, how tall are those, did you say?
2.1 metres, the same as a door.
So quite big then?
One
Quite big,
door is
welcome
exactly
and
the same
safe.
size as one of those signs.
That's rather large.
But
Yes, it's rather large.
Right, I will now take the vote on, is it all of the signs now?
Or just these two?
Right,
You know where the-
you have moved and seconded now, Councillor Blakeman and Councillor Taylor have moved and seconded to omit these two signs. Could I have a show of hands on that, please?
3, 4,
Right, those against that proposal?
okay. We can now move on now to the, getting rid of the 3 banner signs. Yeah.
Are you going to put those up as well, Phil?
Yeah.
Yes.
I move we accept the 3 banner signs are not given permission.
All the others with the exception of the 3 signs. Is that seconded?
Second by Councillor Powell, a show of hands, please.
Yeah, so those signs have gone, Chairman.
Right,
Those signs
thank
have
you.
been omitted, the 3 banner signs, yeah.
We now go on to page,
No, no,
sorry,
the next sign, the rest of the signs now, so that
Yes.
leaves.
Right,
the
carry on, Phil.
7.
I'm sure no one's going to get lost when they're looking for McDonald's.
Right, so that's 27 signs, Chairman.
Right, 27 signs. You all happy with that now? Right, it's been moved.
Chair, what about the condition about Welsh?
That's not on before us.
That isn't before. That's not before us. Right. 27 signs. Yes, yes. Roger, did you move approval? Did you? Right, and Maureen was second. Could I have show of hands on the total of 27 signs, please? Thank you. Those against?
Those against?
Those against?
Abstention. Two, right. Therefore, plan permissions granted, Chairman, for 27 signs.
Right, thank you very much. All right, now, Phil, we go down page to 39.
4C, Debbie. Debbie, 4C.
4C.
It's the fascia signs. Pass that round as well so people can see it more.
So how many signs are there? Six.
Six.
So 27 signs plus a further 6 we're looking at now, okay? These are illuminated pictures, yeah?
No.
They're just the signs on the building. Oh, we've got that.
More welcome, more welcome.
More welcome.
Okay. So these are the
Thank you,
proposed...
members. Thank you.
Right. So these aren't now... we're moving on from the curtilage signs to the signs, fascia signs on the actual building. Okay. So it's orientated in northeast-southwest axis with the car park and main approach, as we've seen, being towards the southeastern elevation, facing away from the heads of the Valley Trunk Road. The actual drive-through elevation will be more towards the heads of the Valley Road. And on that elevation, you'll see there are two Golden M signs, internally illuminated, okay? They are a height of 1.4 metre across and 1.4 metres high. Yeah. So they're square signs, 1.4 metres by 1.4. Okay, on the two end elevations, you'll actually have the McDonald's writing. Okay. The name of the rest, they'll be 5.4 metres long and 0.6 metres high. So they're, oh, sorry about that. So they're relatively... no, I wasn't. I was actually going to say they're a lot smaller than, for instance, the totem signs that you've talked about elsewhere. 600 millimetres high. Okay. In relation to the building is 5.8 metres high, so has to be seen in that sort of context. The elevation facing the actual car park will have the McDonald's sign on it and a Golden M again, so the size of the other drive-through elevations. So we think we've actually reduced the number of signs that were originally proposed on the building. We feel now that it's not too cluttered. It does announce reasonably the identity of the building, so we can get away from having those three signs we mentioned earlier, those banner signs, and this will be self-evident then from the road as well, which will mean that the totem sign may not be necessary, but I'll go on to that in the next application. So we feel these are appropriate to announce the identity of the building. We'd recommend approval. We've actually, in terms of highway safety, we've had a response from the Trunk Roads people, and they've said that there's no objection from a highway safety perspective. So we'd recommend approval.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Hickman?
No comments on this really, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Blakeborough? Well, sorry. Okay, sorry, go. Councillor Harris, Councillor Powell, you're happy with that?
Can I just clarify the colouring scheme? Because I think you were saying that they're looking at greys and greens and not that bright yellow and red.
Yeah, I'll go back actually to the actual to the actual mock-ups of the building perspectives. It shows the colour scheme there. Right, okay. Yeah, so you get an idea that there on the drive-through elevation there's white background with a sort of dark green background to the yellow M to match in with the canopy there. White lettering on the other elevations there, and then that's the dark green background with the white sign and the yellow M. So they're a lot more subtle than they used to be, but that is the corporate image that McDonald's are promoting at the moment, instead of the reds and the bright yellows, albeit the yellow is there.
Okay. Councillor Dovey and Councillor Higginson.
Just one point, so as I've got the orientation right, where the drive-through is, where the gold M's are against a green background, the two of them, that doesn't face either of the roads. Which way does that fascia face?
Yeah, sorry, that's the drive-through elevation, so the head to the Valley Road is up here. So that is the main elevation that you will see, particularly when you drive in from Merthyr direction, from Ilwyn direction.
But it will be...
Well, you'll see that elevation and that elevation when you drive past it. That will be the long-distance elevation, but that will be when you're immediately almost alongside the building, that will be the elevation you'll see. And that elevation will be the elevation you'll see, subject to obviously planting going in there, from the east, traffic approaching from the east, that elevation, which have the McDonald's white
And the drive-through is screened as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I would argue it isn't much, but I would argue that probably they could do without the yellow M's gold M's against a green background at the back there, because there's going to be cars going through underneath it, and the 3 selling areas, as far as they're concerned, are the other 3 elevations, aren't they? But if we're interested in cutting back on the signalisation that they have on the building, I would have thought those would have been a couple of signs that they'd be willing to forego. They're recessed into the building for a start, and cars coming by, if you're going to look at them, you've got to be virtually looking at them like that. Whereas all the other signs, especially with those canopies out, the other sides, they have some distance and you can see them at an angle and whatnot. I would have thought that those are not particularly necessary.
Chair, could I just mention we've kind of strayed slightly from whether or not they're visually harmful onto whether or not they're necessary, and they are 2 different arguments. So what we're looking at is, are they acceptable in highway safety terms, and are they acceptable in visual amenity terms?
Just on that basis, then they're acceptable.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Right, Councillor Higginson?
Prepare to move, we accept them, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Right, and you have a second, Councillor Powell. Joe, answer a second.
Number 10 for approval, Chairman.
Those against?
And 1 against, so therefore commission review.
Last but not least, 803.
This
Okay.
is the last McDonald's application of the day on page 103.
So this is a proposal for an 8-metre high totem sign. It has been reduced from 12 metres in association with the McDonald's store. It'll actually be located at the top of the bank in that location. So it'll be 8 metres high. Bear in mind the building's 5.8 metres high. And then it will look like that. So it'll be double-sided and internally illuminated. I think the issue is, even though there's going to be other signage in the area, which could be actually higher than this, for instance, the hotel signage, because it's a higher building, I think that will be against the backdrop of a building. This will stand alone and be a vertical element, and it will sit up on the top of the bank there with the backdrop of the Blorange behind it. So I think in this instance, we think this is probably unnecessary. The building will already be
You think it's
visible.
got enough signs?
Will be visible with the fascia signs on it. So we think that this really is probably unnecessary and for visually harmful, and will be visual clutter. One thing that is, we haven't got a response from Welsh Government Highways on this, and we feel that that is necessary before we issue any decision on this application. So what we'd suggest is that if members are minded to refuse it, that is the decision of today, but that would be subject to a response from Welsh Government Highways before any decision is issued, as that could, in theory, form another reason for refusal if they object. Do you want to add to that, Mark?
I was just going to clarify, Chair. So we're recommending refusal on visual amenity grounds. If Welsh Government comes back also objecting, then we'll add on highway safety grounds as well. I don't think they will, but if they do, then there'll be 2 reasons for refusal, not 1.
Right, thank you. You all understand that? You refusal and you're seconded.
No, Madam Chair, I would just wonder if this is the sort of thing that we could defer rather than refuse, especially for when the building is built, and we can actually, if you like, see it in context. But if we need a response from Welsh Government, why don't we refer it until we wait for that?
Yes. Do you wish to do that?
Yeah. We're saying that. I think it's probably good.
I think the building still wouldn't be built in that time period. So you potentially have the answer from the Welsh Government, but no context to assess it against. We're happy with our stance as officers. We think this will be a bit of an isolated and prominent feature, and is unacceptable visually.
Right, thank you. We've got a proposal and a second. Oh, sorry, Councillor Downey.
Well, I don't agree with the committee. The public are used to looking for signs of this nature as guidance, and they look for them from a long distance. The white McDonald's signs look fine and they look big, but from a long distance, if you're a motorist, they are not clear in what they're saying. Those signs will have been scientifically tested to ensure that they can be definitive in what the facility is from a distance. They also ensure that motorists do not make last-minute judgments. They've got plenty of time to make the decision of where they're going to place their car, etc. I believe that that sign is an essential sign as far as road safety is concerned, and I am totally against the decision, if it's taken, of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
Right,
said if it's taken.
It's been recommended for refusal, and you've moved refusal, Councillor Harris. Councillor Powell has seconded.
No,
the
we
other way
didn't.
round. The other way round. Sorry.
No, I'll move refusal. No, sorry, I move approval. I move
Sorry,
approval.
I'm taking the vote to begin with on refusal.
No.
So could I have a show of hands for refusal, please?
Only on this one.
Right, and those for accepting the signs?
You could put Welsh, welcome on
Thank you. We now move on to page 123, and this is the paper mill at Sudbrook. I should remind everyone at the beginning that we are live streaming. Okay, Mark?
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. This is a full application for residential developments on the former paper mill site in Sudbrook. And it's coming to you for a resolution on what we would have done, because we've actually had an appeal on this, an appeal against non-determination of the application. So we've had an application in. Because we didn't determine it within 16 weeks, the applicant can appeal non-determination, which they've chosen to do. So the purpose of this report is to get committee's stance on the matter, and that'll be our basis for defending the appeal. But to give a bit of context, in essence, really, they're trying to push along some progress on the application. So at the same time, at the same time as this appeal has gone live, they've also reapplied for exactly the same thing. So we've got this one that's at appeal, and then a new current application. The purpose of the new application being that we can keep negotiating. So if I talk through the application and the issues, that'll hopefully make a bit more sense. The application is for 219 dwellings. The site is allocated in the local development plan as one of our strategic housing sites. It's allocated as 6.6 hectares, all within a settlement boundary, and for 190 dwellings, but there's reference in the inspector's report to plus or minus 10%, so they've gone plus 10%, which is 209. So in that sense, it's policy compliant. The site they've come in with is actually 7.1 hectares, so it's slightly larger, but it's wholly within the Sudbrook settlement boundary. So in terms of allocation and housing numbers, it's fine, it's policy compliant. The issues that have primarily come up are in relation to affordable housing or the lack thereof. And then there's several proposed reasons for refusal, which are really tying up some loose ends that we hadn't finished negotiating on. But as things stand, we don't have a Section 106 agreement to tie in contributions for leisure, education, bus routes, travel plan, and a couple of other bits and pieces. So I'll go through those bits as well. In terms of the site, you'll see from the photos, and you'll have seen yesterday when we went out, it's a large brownfield site. Some of the mill buildings have been knocked down, some are still remaining. It's surrounded on the one side by the Severn Estuary, and on the other side by a narrow strip of land, which is a railway siding outside of the site, with some landscaping on, and then part of that railway siding is now a community garden. On the other side of the road, you'll see the long terrace of Sudbrook, which is a traditional terrace of houses. I think there's about 150 homes in Sudbrook, so this is a sizable scheme, but that concept has already been accepted at the LDP examination stage. So the concept of that number of houses being added to Sudbrook is accepted. The proposal comprises a mix of house types. There's 22 bed dwellings, 110 3-bed dwellings, and 89 4-bed dwellings proposed. So a mix of housing types, you can see on a couple of the elevations coming up. Fairly traditional in terms of design. It's what Redrow call a heritage range, which look a bit kind of almost 1950s-ish in appearance. So they appeal to people who like a traditional looking house, but the convenience of modern builds. So it's primarily semi-detached and detached, but some short terraces of 5 or so properties. So there's an idea of the appearance of them. So again, in that sense, no objections or problems from us. And again, in terms of the site layout, the level of amenity provided, so the size of the gardens, the relationship between windows, etc., is all fine. We're happy with that. And we're also happy with the relation between the proposed houses and the existing houses in Sudbrook. Go back on the site plan. So the site will be accessed from the top left-hand corner of this plan, with a bit of a loop road through. So they've looked in the design at a bit of a linear street feature, but you'll see in the report there's some comments from the Green Infrastructure team about the layout and what they think could be better. Personally, I disagree. I don't think there is scope to do a long terrace that faces onto the existing terrace because of the intervening land, because of the landscaping that we want to keep. And I don't think there's any problem at all with the layout that's been proposed there. I think that's a perfectly acceptable layout of houses within the context and in its own right. There's, at the far right-hand corner of the site, there's a bit of public open space. Below that, shaded in yellow, is an existing play area, which I'll comment on in a minute. And that's accessed along the edge of the site, and that access remains open and unchanged. And that's one of the issues that has been queried by, I think, the Community Council. To the southwest of the site, the big kind of grey-green area is another area of public open space. And there's a yellow rectangle within that, which is a further proposed locally equipped area of play, a leap. And then there's scope for linkages through to the All Wales Coastal Path, which is just to the bottom of the plan. So overall, we're happy with the layout of the site. There is an issue surrounding parking. There's a slight shortfall in parking spaces, not as drastic as set out in the highways comments. But there is an issue with some of the parking not being provided as per our standards. And that's because, unlike some councils, we don't include integral garages in our parking calculations. So that is listed as a reason for refusal, although that is pretty easy to overcome. You know, if that was the only issue, we wouldn't be sat here now. There's various Section 106 contributions that we would normally be seeking. And in principle, I think the applicant would be happy to pay, subject to viability. And they've set out a list of things that they would consider, which does include most, if not all, of our public open space essentials, and actually goes a bit further. So, for example, they've offered potentially £406,000 to improve the adjacent scheduled ancient monument, which is within their ownership. My view of that is that's lovely, thank you very much, but it isn't an essential requirement from this development. They own a scheduled ancient monument. If they have some improvement or management or maintenance issues, that's something they'll just have to fund themselves. It's not a direct requirement of this development, so we would rather have that money and use it towards other things such as affordable housing. So as it stands, the scheme proposes no affordable housing at all. I believe members will have received a letter from Mr. Booth of Harrow Estates, who's the applicant, which was sent on to me late this morning. And in that, they suggest that the scheme can provide affordable housing, and it isn't their intention to provide none. But the documents we're working on are the Harrow Estates PLC plan in a statement. Page 44 explicitly states the proposals are for 100% market housing. And they believe that approach is supported by their viability assessments. So in essence, they're saying, because there's some complexities with the site and the level of development they can have, 209 units, it's not viable to provide all of the Section 106 that we want and the affordable housing. So as it stands, based on this document and our discussions, they're offering none, which is contrary to policy and in my mind forms an unacceptable, unsustainable form of development. It's not a balanced community we're creating. So as I mentioned, we have this new application, and the intention is we can keep discussing that with them, work through the viability arguments, and hopefully come to a compromise that's acceptable to both parties, working through the viability toolkit, and in due course that application will come to yourselves, hopefully with something that we can say yes to. But we have this one, which is an appeal against non-determination, so we need to set out our stance as the application stands. So in terms of the reasons for refusal in the report, there's an issue with the parking levels that I mentioned, the issue with the lack of affordable housing, the policy requirements 25%, and as it stands, none is proposed. There's issues with other Section 106 contributions, albeit that is slightly an administrative context. So there's £200,000 sought for bus improvements and to pump prime the development, around about £133,000 for travel plan issues, around about £600,000 for education to increase the capacity of the local primary schools because they are at capacity. And then some leisure contributions. So those Section 106 issues, they could be tied up really neatly through the appeal process simply by the appellants providing us with a legal undertaking to make those payments. But we need to put them on as reasons for refusal now because they form part of our arguments, and that makes sure they're picked up at appeal. The parking as it stands isn't acceptable to us, so that needs to be addressed either via the appeal or is a reason for refusal. Again, you'll have seen in the letter from Mr. Booth, he suggests that if we require more hard standing areas, there's a visual impact to that, which I would accept to an extent. And he also comments there's an extra cost which affects viability. And I think that probably gives a context to some of the debates we're having. We're talking about the cost of a few bits of extra tarmac. I hardly think it's really a significant issue in a scheme of this size, but unfortunately that is the context of some of the discussions we're working through. There's also a suggested reason for refusal in there, which is number 6, which looks at insufficient information at this stage in relation to nature conservation interests, protected species and the like. Again, in Mr. Booth's letter, he points out some updated information about bats was provided in September, which I can confirm is correct. However, our ecologists have still got a concern that not all of the area has been adequately surveyed, so we still need to work through some of that. So as it stands, we put on that reason for refusal as well. So overall, Chair, in theory, in principle, overall principle, the scheme is fine. In detailed design terms, the scheme is fine. but we don't have any affordable housing, which is contrary to policy, and we don't believe there's any justification for that. I don't think 0% is acceptable in any context. At the moment, we don't have a 106 to secure the other contributions, albeit that they are likely to be in agreement to providing those. So their reasons for refusal is a parking shortfall and the conservation issue. The one significant issue that's been raised via consultation responses that isn't a reason for refusal is the access to the site. So there was a previous appeal on this site for 340 dwellings, which was dismissed, so the council won. But none of that argument surrounded the capacity of the highway and the ability for 340 dwellings to be served on the highway infrastructure. And the inspector, agreed with our stance. So in effect, there's no objection to 340 dwellings in highway capacity terms. So we can't substantiate an objection now on 209. And indeed, we have no objection from our highways colleagues on that basis. So I just wanted to round off that one part of the argument, because it has been an issue raised by some parts of the community, but we don't believe that's a sustainable reason for refusal. Hence, it's not listed on there as an extra one. So, Chair, as it is, we're recommending the application, where it's still with us, would be refused, and that this will be the basis for our stance in defending the appeal. We're still hopeful that we can keep negotiating on the current application, and potentially the appeal will go away altogether, which would be preferable, I think, for both parties. But as it stands, we've got this appeal with us and some looming deadlines to provide statements for the inspector.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Mark. Before I ask the local member to speak, were there any bungalows at all in that scheme?
No, Chair, there's no bungalows proposed as part of this scheme. I was just going to have a quick flick and see. Well, I guess it's academic to this. I was going to look to see if Shirley's requested bungalows as part of the affordable requirement. But as it is, there is none as part of this scheme, so that's a debate for the next application.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Fox, if you'd like to take the stand, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, committee. Hopefully 209 houses in a very small community should be more contentious than a McDonald. So I am sure members will give this due recognition. I will take opportunity to emphasise the concerns that even though I recognise what Mark said about access not being a ground for refusal, I will take this opportunity every time I can to make us aware of sometimes where our policy is an ass, if I may, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but sometimes our policy is not helpful, because access is very clearly an issue for the community, because this site is accessed via a 3-phased, single-lane, traffic-lighted bridge, and there are considerable issues, and we know that if you live there. So 209 times 8 or 6 vehicular movements a day is a significant amount of vehicles which are going to be piling up alongside those lights, either coming in or coming out over that bridge. That was exacerbated by 40-odd houses of Barrett's not too long before. So significant pressure on the already congested Portskewett village, and that is something which I know we can't consider in this application, but members need to be very aware, because infrastructural needs are absolutely fundamental for consideration when we take these on board. And I wish our Highways Department had done some more on trying to move that issue. Anyway, I'll move along with that. I'm pleased that the application is here before us today with reasons for refusal. I recognise that something needs to be done on that site. I am conscious that the LDP designated 190 houses could go there, and I do recognise there's some flexibility, and we're seeing 209 come forward in this application. There are real concerns about, obviously, the size still of this, because it actually more than doubles a village. When you bring an estate this size into a community village, a village which is steeped in history and really important to our offer in Monmouthshire, that we actually have to do something which is so drastically changes the scope of that community. However, we are where we are. I understand it is now policy compliant. The fundamental issue issue, as Mark has pointed out, is that there is no affordable housing recommended here. And I know this is a stance which has been taken in several places around the country, probably, where developers are trying to move away from this, the need to put affordable housing. It's absolutely right that we stick to our policy, and it needs to be 25% at least, and not a move away from that in negotiation. I really think we should adhere to that, or we set a very dangerous precedent going forward. There are young people in our community and older people who are desperately in need of housing. Affordable housing is an expensive place to live in Monmouthshire, and we need to make sure we address and stick to our policy on that. And members, I know you will maintain that stance. The actual design of what's coming there, obviously we've seen this before. It's been before, not before this committee, but certainly in circulation. We know the nature of the site, and whilst there are teething issues with it, I suppose it's as good as we're going to get, perhaps in that site. But that's notwithstanding all of the issues I've raised, and there are genuine concerns, and they'll be reiterated by Councillor Paul Watkins, who's here from the Community Council, I'm sure, and perhaps some more issues. So I have not seen any late correspondence. Obviously, I'm not a member of the Planning Committee, from Mr Booth, which is now suggesting there may be affordable housing coming forward in a future application. I'd be interested to know what percentage they're talking about in that regard, and I will remind members of what I just said. I hope that members can adhere to our policy, and officers will make sure that our applicant adheres to our policy of 25% if that is where we are moving toward. So, Madam Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I will always take the opportunity to reiterate those real issues of congestion and additional traffic, which poses a risk, in my view, as a local member of 17 years, to the safe walking routes to school in that community, to that already very congested centre of the village, and the real concerns that we're going to have mounting up on Churchyard Corner and waiting either side of the bridge at key parts of the day because of the lack of walking infrastructure, which enables this site and its residents to access infrastructure in Caldecott and the like. They'll have to do everything by car, and that's a lot of vehicle movements. And I think I better leave it there then, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fox, Leader of the Council. I believe now we have somebody who wants to speak from the Community Council. Could you please state your name, and you have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, council members, my name is Paul Watkins. I'm a member of Community Council, Portskewitt and Subbrook. Just to reiterate what Peter said, really, it's hard to follow. I don't want to repeat all what Peter's gone through now, because it's just our own feelings as well. The highway issue is a massive issue for a lot of people in the village. Getting in and out of the village is going to be really, really tricky. It's bad enough at the moment with the new Barratt houses there. And to add another perhaps 12 to 1,300 movements a day to that, plus you've got services coming into the village, you're going to have a lot of problems. And it will happen. How highways oversaw this, I can't understand it. Secondly, one of the big things is the bridge coming in and out. Now, all right, I know that what they've said, Harrow have said that the traffic during construction will be neutral. Whatever neutral means, I don't know. Will it be pretty much the same as this? But it can be coming in with some pretty big vehicles. And you've got to consider that the paper mill shut down in 2006, which is 9 years ago. And there were some big vehicles coming in then. And the bridge was sustainable. It's a small, single bridge. It was sustainable. It managed with it. But that was 9 years ago. And what I'd like to ask Highways, and anyone else who knows, is when was the last time there was a structural engineer's report looked at and seen and studied to see if that bridge structurally is sound? Because if you had to do work on the bridge, if you had to take the bridge out of action for a period of a week or even days, the whole community would be cut off. So before we move on to building, and it's a project, I'm not against houses, I'm not against development in small villages like ours, but the infrastructure must be looked at, and for Highways to oversee that. And I'd just like to know from anyone, have they seen a report? because if we've got to close the bridge for any period of time, those people will be cut off, and the only way from there is by boat. Parking, again, you say it's a small matter. At the moment, it's a massive matter in the existing village. I think there's something like 418 car parking spaces in place now at the moment on the new plans. Well, my workings out, you're going to need roughly 617, which is 200 parking spaces less. Plus, you've got people coming into the village visiting, parking up. It'll probably end up as happening in the old village now, where people are taking their front gardens out to park on. So it's not a small issue, it's a big issue. Affordable housing is the massive one. That's the one we've got to get, affordable houses. And I don't mean social housing, I mean affordable housing for young people in our area that need to get on the property ladder. People are saving hard to try and get on there. We need affordable houses so they can get on the property ladder and work. People with good jobs, they still can't afford to get on the property ladder. These people must put in place, if they have new developments, they must put in place affordable housing. Other things are just minor things. The entrance to the actual estate, there's a call for a lot of residents for a roundabout rather than a junction. But I won't keep any longer. That's my main points put over. But one of the big issues is that little bridge, and if it ever has got to be taken out of commission, we'll have problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Councillor Blakeborough.
Madam Chairman, my ward is next door.
Oh, sorry. Looking ahead. Sorry, Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer. Yes, Madam Chairman. I mean, I know the area fairly well, and as has been said, it's a single-lane bridge, traffic light controlled, and there are definitely issues there at certain points through the day when traffic is, is quite a fair build-up of traffic. But I mean, the main one is that, and there's other things to be mentioned about the parking around the properties proposed. But the affordable housing element is going against everything that we have fought for over many, many years. And just for that alone, and the office has done the right thing in recommending to us that we refuse this. And I'm prepared to move that we refuse this, Madam Chairman, at the outset.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Blakeborough.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I also visit that area quite regularly, and it was something I raised up in the last application. I just do not understand how Highways is saying that there'll be no impact. I know it's, Mark, I know you hear it again and again, but it's just beyond understanding, really. You've got 209 houses there, at least 2 cars each. So that's about 800 car journeys going in and out on top of the other houses that are already there. When I visited, like 5 in the evening, there is a huge queue on either side trying to get across that bridge and down that single track, really. So I think there is a big issue. It's no reason for refusal. I absolutely agree with you there, but perhaps it's a reason for going back to the developers, requesting further 106 money for bridge maintenance, and yes, actually a structural report to see what state of repair is that in. Yeah, affordable housing. I think we've got 3,000 people in Monmouthshire needing housing. We need affordable housing. And may I suggest, if we do go down the line of looking at it, that it's 25% pepper potted throughout the development and not just put in a small area on the side. So I would support the refusal. Just one other thing, when we're looking at 106 infrastructure money in terms of schools, I'm aware that we are going to have to transport the children to the school, and is this included in transport costs? Because obviously that's an added impact on our budget, which we're already overspending on transport costs.
Chair, in response to that specific point, no, the 106 we'd be seeking, which isn't agreed to at this stage, is for extending the schools to provide extra capacity, not for shipping the pupils around. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, I believe, and then Councillor Wintle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're all agreed that this is in the LDP and it's going to be developed. There is no doubt about that. At the moment, there's that pinch point, and we keep coming time and time again. We spend more time talking about car movements than actually deciding whether or not we're going to build houses to put people in, which I just do not understand at all. If somebody wants to go and live there, they're going to know what the situation is, and they're going to have to be prepared to wait a bit if they want to get over that bridge as it stands at the moment. The important thing here is I cannot believe this developer has turned around to us and said, knowing that we want 25% affordable housing on this site, and saying, no, we're not going to give you any at all. And that is a real slap in the face to anyone that lives in the county, to be perfectly honest. If they want to come and build in our county, they know what our rules are, and to come up with a zero and then basically accusing us of holding everything up is a disgrace, to be perfectly honest. I go along perfectly with what Mark has said. We should just refuse simply on that grounds. So I hope they're listening, and you know, if we are going to carry on negotiating, I think the committee can make it pretty obvious that we're not going to have any hanky-panky on affordable housing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's a new interpretation of saying no. Councillor Wintle next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with Roger saying about you know, the arrogancy really of a company saying no social housing. We don't need the market housing. We need low cost housing. That's our major priority in this county. So this lot could, as far as I'm concerned, could go away if they're not prepared to give social housing. Our planning department has allowed them to get away with no social housing in other towns, Monmouth especially. There's 2 sites there. They haven't provided any. It seems to be a policy, this company. What have we gone through an LDP for? And the major criteria, they've given us a small amount, only 25% for this area. And there's a big need for the low-cost housing. So really, as I said, as far as I'm concerned, we can do away with the rest of the housing, but you must have the low-cost housing. But I know they've got to pay for it. Another thing, looking at the site, because there's not sufficient car parking, you've got to get people parking on the roads. So that means you won't get, knowing what the normal roads they got there, they won't be wide enough for cars to be parked on the roads and safety vehicles going through there. Fire engines, example, refuse lorries. This has only got one road in, one road out. Well, it's one road in, the same road goes out. So therefore, I can see the people at the far end of the estate are not going to get their refuse picked up, because the lorry can't go through. The lads are not going to carry it. I don't blame them. So really, you know, this company needs a kick in the backside, and I agree with the officer's stance that we should refuse this.
Thank you, Councillor Wintle. Councillor Clark, then Councillor Francis Taylor.
On page 127, there's a typing error. The third category of earnings down should be 15,500 to 20,000 and not 10. That's incorrect. Councillor Brakebrugh brought up with me yesterday about the cost of transporting children. As I pointed out, it's proportional. We still have 209 houses paying us council tax, and they will therefore fund their own transport of children to school. It doesn't put a burden on this council if we build 209 houses. My biggest concern is that this is a detailed application. We're going to turn it down fairly obviously this afternoon because of the lack of affordable. None of us, not one of us, has spoken about the detail of the development as far as the design is concerned. And I am concerned, I have a concern, that if by some miracle, some silly inspector gave this permission without affordables, and they've done it elsewhere, we would have no further discussion about design. Now, Mark assures me that we can condition what we say this afternoon, that we would have to come back to the design. The drawings I've got are not sufficiently detailed for me to take a measured look at design. Redrow are very good, in fairness. Their market houses are some of the best that are built in Wales, but we would need to look at it as a committee, as we always do. These drawings do not permit us to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor? Sorry, do you want to...
Yeah, Chair, just briefly on that. In terms of the design of the houses, we're happy as officers that they're acceptable, they're in keeping, they're attractive properties in my opinion. We haven't got into the fine detail of the materials to be used or the roof tiles because we've got this fundamental issue. So what would normally happen as part of the appeal process is we will have to, during that process, put forward a list of conditions that we'd require. So had we granted permission, what planning conditions would we have imposed? And we have to give that list. So what I'd suggest is that we'd have those details of external finishes and materials as one of those conditions and pick it up through that.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Taylor?
Just have a point of clarification, please, on the correspondence that we received from Harrow Estates. So it says that the council didn't register the application, and that's why they're going, effectively, that's why we've ended up with non-determination. Can I ask, first of all, if officers can give us any detail on that? And it furthermore says that the reason that they haven't put affordable houses in is because the council haven't come forward to tell them what they wanted in terms of Section 106 contributions, and therefore they were unable to work out the viability. So can I just have some comment on that, please? So that's what it says in the correspondence, which all planning committee members have been sent.
Yeah. In terms of the sequence of events with the application coming in, it came in December 2014. There are some issues with the way we dealt with the application when it came in. We have a process by which we've gone through this systems thinking approach that I think you're probably aware of and were involved in at the time. But when the application comes in, there's two things really. One, is it legally valid? And then secondly, are we broadly happy with the content? And so want to say, let's go out and start engaging with the community and talk about it. What we didn't do on this one was register it as valid until we were trying to hold off registering it until we were happy with the content. So we wanted some viability appraisal, which we told them at pre-app stage they needed to provide to demonstrate why they weren't providing 25% affordable, and we didn't have that. Legally, the application was valid when it came in. So there's stuff you have to make the application legally valid, and that's when the clock starts ticking and our 16 weeks begins. And then there's these other information, bits of information we want to justify their stance or make the scheme acceptable. Being honest with you, in hindsight, we should have registered the application as valid straight away. What we do is, or what we intend to do, is explain to the customer that the application's valid, but we've got these concerns. We want to keep working through these before we register it. And if they're adamant they want it validated, then fair enough, we'll validate it. But 9 out of 10 times, customers are happy with us working through that process, getting to a scheme that we're comfortable with, broadly speaking, before we start consulting people. Otherwise, what you're finding authorities that don't have this, as where I used to work, an application comes in, you bang out a letter to people, then you actually sit down and look at the plans and say, actually, we need this amended. Then you reconsult people, then you need something else amended, and residents can have 4 or 5 consultation letters and just get completely fatigued by the whole process. So that's the intention of it. They're obviously not happy it wasn't registered as valid straight away, and so we did delay on that, the inspectors confirmed they could appeal after the 16 weeks. That part of their letter's correct. To say that they haven't had a decision now, they can't provide affordable housing because they're still waiting to know what we want, well, they could try reading the LDP, which clearly says 25%. That is explicit. I don't think it is true to say that's been the hold-up. As it says in there, they appealed in April when we were still arguing about not having the viability report. So I don't accept that part of the letter. There's still some ongoing discussions we need to have with them, which are now under the current application. And regrettably, we're now in something of a catch-22 situation because the reason they've said been waiting since September for me to go back and say what the heads of terms are, what do we really want? Well, the reason we've been waiting for that is they've lodged the appeal's valid, so we've had to get authorisation to appoint a barrister, agree some appeal dates when us and the barrister are free with the planning inspectorate, and then write this report up for committee. And now we've got a deadline of the 11th of November to do our statement of case for the appeal. So unfortunately, we've had to set aside working constructively on their application because they've appealed, as ironic as that sounds. So yeah, we are in that slight catch-22, but there are discussions to have with them on the current application, and we'll keep working on that. But yeah, the answer to the first part is, yeah, with the benefit of hindsight, we could have done things better. But we are still at this point in time arguing about a level of affordable housing. So there is still an issue.
And just one further thing, if I may, in terms of the, we're going to determine this application today, but as you say, if the circumstance that Councillor Clark outlines occurs, can I just ask, has there been, so we've agreed, or it has been agreed that access is not an issue, despite the protestations of the local member and the community councillor. Can I ask, though, if that point has been considered, that have there been any more recent structural appraisals of that bridge, which is effectively the only way in and out, there is no other way? Can I just ask that? Because that may be something that we do want to consider in the alongside application.
I'm not aware of any structural appraisals, Chair, of the bridge. I'm not aware that issue's been raised by anybody, such a highways in the past. In terms of the highway capacity, I know it's not quite the question you asked, but we did go through the appeal process on 340 dwellings, and the inspector, was happy that the site can be accessed and the road capacity is there. So it isn't just our highways colleagues who have no objection. That argument's been tested at appeal. So we are where we are with that. So no, I'm not aware of any structural survey on the bridge. So I can ask Mark Davis about that. I'm not sure to what extent it's our bridge or Network Rails. I do think, slightly ironically, it's one of the only ones they don't have to replace for electrification. So it's not on the main line bit, that'll be why. So yeah, we can check on that. And I'm not quite sure what our stance will be on that anyway, because and the other factor on here with a brownfield site, there is a fallback use. Although, yeah, except the paper mill closed in 2006, there are still buildings there. The planning use is still extant, so they can go back. We can have lorries going up and down that road again in planning terms. Whether or not economically that happens is another matter, but we do have that issue to bear in mind as well. So I think, Chair, we'll have to have a chat with Mark Davis to understand if there are structural surveys of the bridge or quite where we stand in that regard. I would just throw out the caveat, we did mention, perhaps we should be asking them for money to replace the bridge or do some other works to it. That will come from a fixed pot of money. So we're kind of almost trying to have our cake and eat it in some ways if we're adamant about the level of affordable housing and all the other things that we're after. But I just make that observation.
Thank you. Councillor Dovey, then Councillor Higginson.
Thank you, Chairman. A very brief one. Peter has mentioned the fact that the design platform, if you like, is not fixed as at the moment. And we're talking about we want these low-cost housing. We're going to take that as a firm stance, obviously. Where, if we do that, and they, where are we with the design features? If they've got to find more money, if what they say is correct, and we are sticking with our position on design, how does that impact our decision on accepting the designs they put in front of us? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, in terms of the finer details such as materials, that's something we can suggest to the inspector as a condition. In terms of the actual design, so do you have an issue with house types looking like that? Then that is something we're considering now. So if you've got an issue with that, we need to raise it as a reason for refusal now. My personal view is the design is fine. I've seen these schemes built in other places, and they do look really good, to be fair. The quality of what Redrow builds is good. I don't think we could substantiate a design-based reason for refusal. It's a full application, so we do have all that information. So all the different house type layouts, we just put a sample on here, but all the different layouts and elevation plans are on the website.
The point I was trying to make was, I know, like Peter and your good self, how these people build. They do a pretty good job. What I'm suggesting is, what would be the likely outcome if we stand by the which we are going to, the need for affordable housing, which they say they can't afford at the moment. Are we going to also stand on the quality and design of the properties put in front of us at the moment? Because they're sure to, if their story is true, then, and they want to go ahead instead of withdrawing from the site, then they've got to find some room somewhere, and that might be in compromising the existing designs. Do you see where I'm trying to get with this?
Yeah, Chair, I understand the point being made. I think that would be an issue for us to look at on the other application, the application that's still with us, because I think you're suggesting that if we do get them to agree to the required amount of affordable housing, they'll have to trim some costs elsewhere. So it would be on that application where, if they have to tweak the designs or dumb things down, where that would happen. On this application, these are the house types before us. These are the house types that'll be before the inspector. My advice is, my opinion is they're fine. They're good quality houses. I have seen them in the real life. And again, based on the drawings, I'm happy as a planning officer. My advice to you as an officer is, if we try to refuse these on design grounds in this context, I think we'd not only lose it, but not be able to substantiate that argument at appeal and potentially have costs against us. That's my advice to you. So I think what's before us is fine. If you're worried they might try and dumb that down to afford affordable housing on the current application, that'll be one on the other application that'll come before committee in the future. So we'll look at that again now.
There's just one comment I'd like to make. I would like to always see on a lot of these very large housing estates more bungalows built, as they keep on saying we're more of an ageing communities, and it would enable perhaps some people to stay in their own community. If they become disabled and they're in a 3-bedroomed house or whatever, it would make more sense if they could move into a bungalow or whatever in the own community. And also we have found in one select that we were in that if people require assistance then, say had a stroke or whatever, that they need a bathroom or facilities downstairs, they have to apply for a grant and all that sort of thing. And when we're designing some of these houses, we do not make it possible where they could have in the plan to alter or install a shower or something downstairs with a downstairs toilet. And it doesn't take up a lot of room, it just needs a little bit of foresight into what would be perhaps make more available use of a family home in the future. And it isn't necessarily just affordable housing area that we need bungalows. I think on the general market we need more bungalows built, even if they're just 2-bedroom. And I think we should be doing more about that on these very large housing developments that we have in this county. Anyway, I've had my say, and I believe Councillor Higginson wishes to move that we accept the recommendation of refusing this today.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we're all aging while the planning committee meetings go on. Yeah, I'm prepared to move that we refuse this application, certainly on the basis of there's no affordable homes planned in that. That is against the policies that this council has, and I think that's sufficient enough to justify it.
Do you wish to sum up at all, Councillor Fox, on any of this? You can have 2 minutes.
Didn't
if you
realise
wish to.
didn't realise I had the chance. No, thank you for. Well, I could see you were obviously going to agree with the issue. We've also got to be, just to reiterate the growing concerns that we need to actually look at the longer term infrastructural needs of communities like Portskew and Sudbrook. There's another 40 odd houses coming at the top of the village we haven't touched on today. I know that's not pertinent to this application, but I think Councillor Watkins from the Community Council made very clear some of the concerns. There is a genuine worry about vehicular access, emergency access. If ever that bridge is blocked, there is no other way. And what we really need to be striving is for a separate access into the village, not a new bridge, a separate access which is achievable, could be achievable out to the Pill Industrial Estate. That is something to think about for the future. However, I thank members for supporting the reasons for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Right, it's been moved and seconded. A show of hands for refusal, please.
That's unanimously if we are refused, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Rob. We go now to page 151, and that is New Church de Vorden.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to the replacement dwelling with associated access, curtilage and landscaping works at Polsey Cast, New Church de Vorden. The application was presented to members at Planning Committee on the 8th of September, recommended for approval. However, members of the committee considered that whilst there's no objection in principle to a replacement dwelling, the movement of the curtilage into the paddock to the northeast would be unacceptable, with the proposed dwelling likely to be overly prominent in that location, particularly from long views across the valley. Members therefore requested that the application be deferred to allow the applicant to reconsider the siting of the replacement house within the existing curtilage. The applicant has requested that the proposal be considered as it stands, and therefore the application is recommended for refusal for the following reason in the report.
Can I move that, Chairman?
Yes, you can if you wish. You'll move refusal. And I would second that. Could I have a show of hands for refusal?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Right. Thank you, Rob. We now go to page 163. Sorry, I put my mic on. 163, and this is the allocation site at Shire Newton.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks permission for the erection of 5 residential units comprising of 2 detached 4-bedroom 2-storey market dwellings and a 2-storey affordable housing block containing 1 2-bedroom house and 2 1-bedroom flats. There would be 2 shared vehicular accesses, 1 for the market housing and 1 for the affordable units. The 2 detached houses would each have a double garage and the affordable units 5 car parking spaces. There would be new hedge planting along the northern and eastern boundaries, with the existing hedge along the road frontage realigned to accommodate the visibility splay. The materials are brick, stone and natural slate roofs. The site is allocated in the LDP for around 5 dwellings with 60% affordable. Therefore, the proposal complies with policies S4 and SAH 11. The mix of house types meets local need and the units meet DQR standards. The land slopes steeply in a northerly direction from the road frontage. Plot 1 follows the building line established by the existing dwellings, and Plot 2 is set much further back and will not be prominent when viewed from the road. Plots 3, 4 and 5 are set closer to the road with a parking court to the rear. There would be a stone wall along the frontage of the site to reflect one of the strong characteristics of Shire Newton, with a public footway provided at the front. The materials are considered to reflect the character of Shire Newton and are acceptable. The main property affected by the development is the Gables to the west of the site. This property has its main windows to the north and south, and there will only be limited views of the proposed development. The gables is also set at a higher level than plot 1, which will reduce its impact, and a 1.8 metre fence is proposed between the properties. The proposed development is not considered to have an unacceptable impact upon the amenity of neighbouring properties. Officers therefore recommend approval of the development subject to a Section 106 agreement in relation to the affordable dwellings and the conditions outlined in the report.
Thank you very much, Paula. The local member wishes to speak. And thank you, Councillor Down, for being so patiently waiting to address the committee.
We're patient, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to attend and speak, and thank you for those members who attended the site meeting yesterday. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there. Is there a site plan we could have a quick look at? Please, that'll do. Yeah, thanks. You'll notice in your papers that the Community Council apparently say that I'm here to speak on their behalf. Well, I'm here to speak on my own behalf, not on behalf of the Community Council. Community Council, I know, have said that they think the site is too crammed and that 4 houses would be better than 5. Certainly I don't think you could put any more than 5 on, but I'm content to accept that number. I think my principal concerns, and I accept that LDP has been passed and that in principle the site must go ahead. My concern is the fact that there are 2 accesses. You'll notice that there are separate accesses for the private houses and for the social houses, because of course this is Shire Newton and we can't have the common people in the social housing mixing with the BMWs and Mercedes and whatnot, can we? No, I think that is absolutely wrong. And I think that we ought to have just a single access at the point where the private houses are. And if you can see, I don't know, I can't see it well enough from here, but in sort of behind number 3, if you can see that, is where I think it is perfectly possible to have the access. That would then do away with the need for the second access, and avoid the necessity for re-siting what is a historic hedgerow, and which would undoubtedly be damaged by its removal. The other point I would make is I'm interested to note that there's a footpath in front of the site to the south, which seems a bit pointless since it actually goes nowhere. In front of the gables and T-canal, etc., there's just a grass verge, no footpath, not intended to be one, so it seems a bit of a pointless exercise, frankly. So in summary, Chairman, my issue with it is really an access issue. I don't see the need for 2 accesses. For me, it does seem a bit like a segregation of the occupants, the residents of the social houses, from the private houses, and I think that is something that can easily be overcome, and I would ask that members take that on board. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I would like some clarity, but I believe if it's that the rural allocation policy would come into play here, so it would be local people that would necessarily have first option of those houses anyway.
I don't have a chair.
Councillor Blakeborough?
Just ask a question really. On the point of the single access, what was the reason for the double access? Is it a highway safety reason for that to be there? Is there a highway safety issue there?
The applicants went through pre-application discussions with our highways officers, and the scheme that's submitted has been arrived at through those pre-app discussions. This is what highways have asked for. to provide the adequate visibility for the access into the site. So, you know, this is what our highways officers have asked for in the pre-app.
I have to say, normally our highways officers are never terribly keen about having additional accesses off a main highway. They usually try and minimise that. So I'm surprised, and clearly we, you know, with the local members' views being what's incredibly logical, I would suggest that we can't really progress this any further if we are minded to say that we'd like one access. So ought we defer it, or ought we send it back to officers to negotiate with the applicant just to change that access and allow delegation panel to pick that up if we're happy, except for the access, because you'd presumably have to move that building over a bit in order to accommodate. I'm not sure really. I don't know what you'd have to do with access. I'm not making any suggestions because I don't know. Just one access.
I mean, just in terms of asking the question, do you know the reason for it? Because I know you said Highway said it's there, but what was the reason for it?
Well, it's to provide safe access into the site and turning facilities on site. And with
that with one access.
for each of those properties there, they've got their own accesses. I can't see what the problem is with having two accesses rather than one.
Because you wouldn't normally have, you wouldn't have two accesses on a site, you know, on a development site. It's either one site or it's two sites. So I would suggest, can I propose then, members, that we ask officers to go back to the applicant and have a look at the access, because we're minded that it would be better to have one access.
Or justify the reason,
Yeah, or a justification for why it's necessary.
But you have to look at what is the harm.
Well, I think the local members kind of set out that it does appear to be then two separate sites as opposed to one site, which is...
And it loses that hedgerow as well.
And you lose the hedgerow.
Which normally we try and keep.
So that's the proposal then, to go back and
It'd make it cheaper for them,
and
it's a
defer
win-win.
it to...
Cheaper for them. I will second you there.
You might get another house on there if you don't need two entrances. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Dovey, or not?
Councillor Taylor has put a motion forward, hasn't she? Yes. For the justification of it. Okay.
Anything you wish to add, officers?
No, sorry, we were just saying it's slightly frustrating for the applicant in a sense. They've followed our pre-app advice and have been asked to go back on it. But if members can, within your remit to ask for that, if that's what you want. So we can go back and ask them to do it.
Right, you propose deferment. You want a deferment?
Deferment for one access.
For one access. And you have a seconder? And do I have a show of hands for deferring that? That's unanimous. Right, we now have the last application of the day, and this is at Upper Mead Farm at Lydart. Oh, I thought it was Penarth, sorry.
Okay, this application seeks retrospective planning permission for the extension of a parking area and the creation of an overflow car park at Upper Mead Farm, Lydart. It's one we saw on site yesterday, and members saw that the one car park is actually in situ. It's an extension of the existing arrangement, laid with stone chip-ins and enclosed by a post and rail timber shockproof fence. Area 2, which has not yet been used for parking, is intended to be an overflow car park during busy periods. It will have a stone track 3 metres wide for access, with the remaining area as grass and used for parking. It will be enclosed with a post and rail shockproof fence as per Area 1. The car parking areas are relatively informal and appropriate for the rural setting. The visual impact of the proposed parking areas will be limited, and the development will not harm the rural character and appearance of the area. They are viewed in the context of the overall site. The development does not harm the natural beauty of the rural landscape, which lies within the Wye Valley A1B. Officers therefore recommend approval of this application.
Right, thank you. I believe Councillor Blakewood, this is your ward.
Yes.
Then I'll take Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very successful rural business, and it does benefit the local community and Monmouthshire as a whole. The area of outstanding natural beauties comment was no objection, so that's good. Community Council have no objection. They only raised the issue of the fencing, but that's there to segregate the parking from agricultural land. So I would support this application.
Councillor Harris, then Councillor Wintle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday, I don't know if it was the farm manager we saw, or whoever it was. The owner. Okay. Well, talking about Area 2, the overflow parking, he was concerned that it gets muddy and can't be used all the time. So I suggested that we condition grasscrete. So could we do that in the...
Joe, we're just thinking through the logistics. Strictly speaking, we can't condition to require someone to do something extra that they don't have to do when they might not want to. But yeah, we haven't got an issue with the problem with the proposal.
I suggest, because it does get very wet up there, and if they've got things going on all year round, it's going to cut up the ground quite a bit if they need that to be parking.
We could, actually thinking about it, I'm thinking on my feet here now. Tell me, Rob, if I'm talking rubbish. We could put on a condition saying if the parking itself is to be anything other than just the grass, they need to give us details of the surfacing prior to its installation. And then if he wants to put in grasscrete, he can give us details of grasscrete and we can say yes.
Do it in the non-chair amendment.
Yeah? Sorry. Trying to think round in a circle there.
Roger asked my question, Chair.
Yes, Ludo yesterday did say it was a problem. It was muddy, it was a problem, so I think he would be receptive to the suggestion that you made.
Madam Chairman, just a point. One of these car parks is retrospective. We've just got to get the message across up there that we have a planning committee in this county and we need to be told or asked before you build things. And to keep on doing retrospective items, we've been there, I don't know how many times, but I must be there half a dozen times, all on retrospective. Can we please somehow, officers, get the message across that we have a planning system? We sit here hour upon hour, we go touring around this county every month at our own time and at our own expense to look at these things. It would be much better if these applications were not retrospective.
And also, might I add, before I take other members, that the council itself still has to be very aware that we have, I think it is 30% interest in that up there. So to the general public, we have to show that we are acting properly for every applicant in the county. So, you know, we have to be very aware of that. Councillor Powell, Councillor Wintle again, and then Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think they want to be impressed that there can be told it's got to be altered and taken back to what it was, because in the past years I've known houses that have been built and we've made them take them down because they've been retrospect and they haven't passed the planning. So I know this would, but they ought to realise that that is a possibility, that if they don't ask first, they might get it.
Chair, can I just clarify on that? We wouldn't have made anyone take down their house just because of retrospective. It would have been because what they'd done was unacceptable. So, yeah, so there is quite a clear difference. In terms of this, Chair, to be fair, there's a request at a previous committee meeting that we write to the owners, which we've done. And we've agreed to meet. We're meeting Ludo in the near future. But to be fair, just to clarify for yourselves, I went here on one of my early tours, having started in Monmouthshire, and that area of car parking was there. So that predates the letter. So they haven't ignored the letter we've sent or committee's previous request, to be fair to them.
We'll look forward to a more successful future.
Yes.
Councillor Wintle and Councillor David Evans.
Well, Madam Chair, I was going to suggest that enforcement slap a fine on them occasionally. That might concentrate his mind.
Thank you, Councillor Wintle. Councillor David Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Peter, because the last time we went there, we went to look at climbing apparatus, and it was up. And we said then, and I said in here, that before they go ahead and do anything else, they should apply for planning. You know, they're no different to anybody else. And I think, like you said, a letter, you know, to the point, saying if this happens again, you know, we won't tolerate it. As the chair just said, we are still in ownership of 30%, is it? Something like that. And so it's going to fall back on us as well.
Thank you, Councillor Blakeborough.
To be fair, I think they have got the message from the last application. I think you're right. The car park was there before they received the letter. I know there's another application coming through, and they are going through the planning procedure in advance. So I think they have got the message now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dovey.
The only point I would make in addition to is that there are other people out there that do abide by the rules and regulations, and in the countryside.
Thank you. Do you wish to move as the local member, Councillor Blakeborough?
Please. I move for approval.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Harris. Could I have a show of hands for approval, please? Right, thank you.